Does it sound weird in here?
There's a noise.
It sounds different, doesn't it?
There's a mechanical noise. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, it's 6:02 and we are live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lake Worth Beach Budget Workshop number 2 of 2023. The date is July 24th. May I have the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McBoy,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Here.
Thank you very much. Do we have a?
I didn't say Commissioner Reynaldo Diaz.
Well, I know, and let's say why. Madam City Manager, do you have an announcement to make?
Yes, we had a baby.
Mr. Diaz had his
So,
baby
Baby
today.
Diaz has arrived. So we're excited. Don't know the details yet, but I'm sure we'll get that soon. We'll make
Yeah.
that announcement.
That'd be great.
So I think he has an excuse,
He certainly does.
a good
He
one,
certainly
a
does.
very good one.
Okay, I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So this is an update of the fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budgets, which will be presented by staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will turn it over to the finance team and they'll take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Yannick Nahayo, Finance Director. I'm here with Monica McNaughton. I'll just get it wrong, sorry. She's the Assistant Finance Director, mainly focused on the budget. So what we are presenting to you today is an update of just the governmental funds, which is the general fund and the other funds that I'm just going to go over. We went back to the departments and just to make sure that we have a balanced budget. So, which just a quick
Following
update.
along,
So you have we
I
just
have two
handed
of
you
these.
a summary.
Thicker one.
Yes.
Go with
So the one
thicker
that has the page numbers,
big
one
number.
of 29 is the one that we should follow.
Oh, there is a.
And then there's other attachments that we have, which we will go over throughout the meeting. Right. So what we gave you is the outline that summarizes all the governmental funds. What we added to the outline are the individual funds separately with the pie charts, should we need to go over them. Okay. So I'll start just to go over the updates. As mentioned earlier, we were able to to develop a balanced budget for governmental funds, which will be we're going to go over the general fund, the beach fund, code remediation fund, the building permit fund, the golf fund, the debt service fund, the IT fund, garage fund, self-insurance, and employee benefit fund. So the updates that we went over. So if you recall, for the first workshop, we had a deficit of $500,000 for the general fund, which was mainly driven by the reduction in revenues for from the electric. So what we updated the general fund revenues, the state revenue sharing, we were increased by 5% to 1.7 million, and that was based on historical data. And that detail is on page 2. At the half-cent sales tax will also increase by 5% to approximately 3.3 million. Also based on historical data on page 2. So we had a total overall increase in the general fund revenues of approximately 239,000. Then we also had to make some budget cuts for this personnel, the city manager's department. We unfunded 2 positions. For your information, when we say unfunded, that means we we had to make the cut just to balance the budget because not necessarily that we don't need that position, but we just did not have, we're just doing our best to balance the general fund budget. So that would be the grants coordinator. They had a total salary of approximately 32,000, which includes benefits. This is just an allocation for the city manager's department. So this particular position is allocated across the board, but for the city manager's department, it's 32,000, which includes salaries and benefits. We also had to unfund the strategic improvement project manager, which totaled about 29,000. Also, this is just an allocation. And this is also salaries and benefits included. Sure.
When you say allocations,
Yes.
are you referring to like that part of that salary was allocated to the city manager? Part of it was allocated to other departments?
Correct.
Just so I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So to be more specific, the grants coordinator was approximately 31% to the city manager's department,
The total was roughly 100,000, of which.
give or take. Yes,
Give or take.
95, if I remember
Something
correctly.
like that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to see a decrease in other departments as
Yes,
well.
we
Okay,
will.
thanks.
So if you should have also this handout,
No, that's fine.
but
I'm doing my best. I'm not the
But we have-
finance
we
girl.
have the percentage allocation. on
Okay,
this-
thank you.
On this handouts.
Thanks.
So the same thing with the strategic improvement manager, that was approximately 20%. And again, that also includes salaries and benefits. For the legal counsel, based on historical data, that expense has never exceeded 600. So we decided to reduce that cost to 100,000. I mean, to 500,000, I'm sorry.
Mhm,
We reduced it by 100,000.
right.
Okay.
Does he know?
He's not here. Approved.
Did you want to add?
Well, I was going to say, just like Yannick mentioned, historically it hasn't gone over 600,000, and we also try to keep a pulse on the activity under the legal services.
Yeah.
So
Now, is this just Mr. Trivia? Is this outside counsel as well? Because we have other outside counsel that we pay.
Any outside counsel that he approves
Yeah,
goes on there.
goes in there. Okay,
His
thank you.
department, yes.
Thanks.
And we also have, so the next department is the financial services department. We unfunded accountant one, which is 100%, it's 106,000, salaries and benefits included. And accountant two, which is 129,000, also salaries and benefits included.
And you can function?
Well, you go.
Pieces. Ms. Stokes,
I just want to say,
I don't want to interrupt you, but just these are
Yeah.
sort of educational things. As
Sure.
we go.
I'm really concerned about the strategic improvement project manager because we have a lot of projects in
Right.
the city that we've been waiting to kind of
Yeah.
get going, and we hear how much stress.
I think
that
let's
is
talk about
stretched
every,
so thin.
I have the same concerns. Let's talk about like the big picture when we get to the end, because those are just sort of decisions that we have to talk to staff about. So let's see
But
what
I'm
else.
just wondering, when we're doing this, do we have other backup plans? Like what is going to help fill the voids that these unfunded positions are going to create?
well, first, remember, these are not being eliminated. These positions are not being eliminated, but on hold. So we're hoping through the budget, as we post the progress of our budget through the year, we're able to fund it at some point. But for the purpose of balancing the budget, making sure that we are on the positive side, we believe that during the budget year, we may see some areas where we have saved and may not have needed certain expenses. And we can fund these positions again in the middle of the year.
Yeah, I mean, they all seem important. Mr. McVoy?
I hear that logic, and I think it's probably happens fairly often that as you go through the year, you figure out, hey, we didn't spend some money we expected.
Mhm.
But what we're saying is at this point in the budget, we don't have enough money to fund that position.
Right.
when we get to the budget next year, the person is already on board. They came in 3/4 of the way through the year or halfway through the year, whatever it is, so they don't cost us quite as much that year. The following year, unless we want to let them go at that point, they come in at full freight, which we're saying right now, we can't do full freight. So I'm a little skeptical of, I don't know that we're being very honest with ourselves if we say, well, we might find some money during the course of the year and we'll scrape it together for that year. We already know right now that we don't have enough money to fund it for the year through, which means you're in a bind the next year.
Right, but at least, I mean, they're not hiring. I think Miss
I mean,
Davis will.
am I missing something in my logic there, or is that about accurate?
At this very moment, because we needed to have this, this budget balanced, we needed to make some cuts.
Sure.
And part of the discussion was, okay, let's put a hold on these positions and see how it works out, during the fiscal year.
Yeah. I don't think
So-
you're wrong.
We,
You know, I mean,
so
I
you're
think you're right
absolutely
because-
right.
That's
but
fine.
Yeah.
it
So
just
maybe
happened-
I
the
think
sad
so.
fact is we just can't afford those, Miss Kim.
Right, so I guess I have two questions. Just one, I want to go back really quickly. With the general fund revenue update, and we see the overall increase of $239,000. That didn't just roll into our operating expenses for general fund, correct?
Rolling to.
Like if we said, oh, be like the 0.5 cent sales tax, like
Yes.
that can only be used for certain projects. So we're not taking that extra increase and using it to help balance our budget.
No, this is part, when I went back to the state, to the revenue sharing, I noticed that we were estimating it.
Okay,
And it needed to be updated.
but that's kind of sitting in its own area, not being touched right now.
Is it unrestricted? The
No,
half
it's
cent is
unrestricted. It's unrestricted.
It's unrestricted.
Yes.
Okay.
The 0.5 cent,
No, the sales tax is different. That's
Right.
discretionary sales tax. That's not part of it.
okay,
This
because
is
I saw the 0.5 cent,
This is half.
sales
half
tax
cent sales
increase.
tax. Right. This is is
but we're not counting on that increase to help with our budget shortfalls because that's over somewhere else, can only be used for certain projects.
no, for this state revenue sharing is for the general fund purposes. It's unrestricted. What you're referring to is the discretionary sales tax.
Right, yes.
Yes, that's set aside completely.
Okay, so that's not
That's not part of.
good. I
this.
just wanted to double check that to make sure that, and then, but it does say that we have a surplus of approximately $151,000 with all these cuts and everything.
Yes.
So I would just like to think of other solutions, if there are ways to contract with people to help us manage certain projects. If we're not going to have an in-house, like full-time project manager that we can hire to help move things like the pool or other things forward, I think we should really look into outside options that can come in and help us make sure that they're keeping an eye on these different projects and creating a plan and a procedure that's going to help us move them forward.
Okay.
And then it's not a long-term commitment, but we do have a little extra money to play with here. I don't know. I just think this was a position that was filled by the previous administration that seemed pretty critical. That was Jess's role.
Yeah.
And she really helped make sure that projects were
Mhm.
going. So
And I don't think they're denigrating the projects or the play, because right now we don't have the money. Maybe we can find the money. Hopefully we can.
So
Ms.
if I understand you correctly, with that surplus, we should probably consider getting outside contractual services to fill in the gaps.
I think we need to look into something to fill the gaps.
Yes.
We need,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I know some of our departments do that.
right, other departments do it. I think
Yeah.
we need to look into the
Right.
city manager's office doing it.
Mhm. I'm Ms. Malenka.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Yannick, Monica, thank you for
Yeah.
working so diligently and all of the staff and directors for taking the cuts where they need to be. A balanced budget is very important. At my city meeting last week with the city manager, I told her how excited I was that we were actually on track for the first time in the city's history, I think in 30 years of being where we need to be on the budget calendar.
Mhm.
A couple things I just want to bring up that the city needs to focus not so much on cuts, but where can we improve our income? And it can be from the smallest things, like I mentioned to City Manager Davis. We have many parcels in this city that are stupid little 12 by 2 foot lots that could be sold to the people whose land that they're next to. we have ways that we can start looking, Commissioner Diaz brought up, let's start talking
Mhm.
about paid parking lots.
Right.
So I don't want us to be Debbie Downers and say we had to make cuts. I want us to get through this budget and say, what's the plan for next year and how do we bring more money into the city? How do we elevate the level of service? Not how do we continue to cut and think about, I agree with Commissioner Stokes, we need to look at outsourcing for some of these grants. But I think it's upon all of us who sit up here to help find that money, to build those relationships with the electeds in the higher offices and continue to try to bring in more money and more funding. So I want to say thank you to staff and not, I'm not looking at this as a negative, but I'm looking at this as a positive. Okay, this is what we had to do this year. We don't want to do this again next year.
Yeah.
So what do we have to do next year? What are the tough decisions we have to make here to make sure we're not having this conversation next year? And make the residents and the business owners realize that the city is a business, and if we don't want to cut services, we want to elevate services.
And our expenses are going up just like everybody else's.
Correct. So the one thing I did want to point out is, we had a huge increase of $480,000 just to the self-insurance fund. I mean, that's a huge increase. Hopefully that won't happen
Oh,
again
yeah.
next year.
Right.
So just thank you to the staff, thank you to directors, and I feel I've gone through these numbers all weekend, and I feel that we're making bad decisions. I would say something, but we're not. I think that we're making the necessary decisions for this year. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I just want to say, I appreciate what you said, Commissioner Maliga. That is one of our biggest issues in the budget, the increase in property liability
Mhm.
insurance and the cost of services and commodities that everyone's experiencing in this crisis. So it's one of those things you just have to crunch down and take those, make those tough decisions in the position we're in right now. The other thing, and I appreciate you mentioning about how do we increase revenues. I also pulled out the study, the revenue study that our internal auditor had put together, just to see what kind of items or areas that we can look to increase revenue and what will spark some or inspire us in areas that we should look at. So I'm doing that as well.
Okay.
So the building fund, the changes from the first workshop is that we increased the expenses by $500,000. That's because the building fund is going to be contributing to the fleet maintenance facility. It will be a contribution of approximately $500,000. So this first workshop had a surplus of approximately $250,000. So this will have an impact to the user fund balance, which will increase by $250,000 as well.
Is this, just so I understand, is this that large sort of 4 million-ish that we need to
Yes, that
spend
we
down?
need to spend down, right? So
Great.
they were able to, since that facility will have also building permits for vehicles, it will contribute about $500,000. Okay.
Okay.
Right, so the beach fund, that's another example because of that strategic improvement project manager, that allocation to the beach fund. We had a deficit of approximately 13,000, and since we had savings of 23,000, which also includes salaries and benefits, and we ended up with a surplus of approximately $10,000. Okay, the staff insurance fund, as you mentioned, Commissioner Malega, because of that significant increase, which came up to be 43% more than compared to last year. That expense increased by 480,000, and it leaves us with a surplus of approximately 12,000. Okay.
And just so I understand a little bit better, the self-insurance fund, the concept is we set aside some money so that from bad things happen, we can spend out of it.
Right.
If that's our own in-house thing, how does the expenses increase by 480? I understand that if we're buying insurance from company X,
Right.
and they say, hey, this year we're going to charge you $480,000 more, that's clearly an increase.
Right.
But if we're insuring ourselves, where does the increase come from?
So we use a broker.
Yeah.
We use a broker, and they usually give us an estimate of based on, I guess, historical claims. And I'm sure you could.
I don't think your microphone's on.
Mhm. hit the button on it.
There's a button.
You gotta have an attorney.
I'm not the
There
extrovert.
you go.
I'm not the extrovert that my peers are. Okay. We have a risk expert. It's Diffuse. It's Ben Few and Company, and they work with our insurance adjusters and our insurance agents to tell us how the claims are trending. So they are the ones who do all the calculations, all the actuarial stuff, and they're the ones that give us the numbers to budget.
But are those,
It's not an actual increased bill that we got over our bill that we got last year, because we don't get a bill for a self-insurance fund.
No, but what they do
It's
is
an
they
estimate of-
follow the trends, and then they use actuarial assumptions against those trends to tell us what we should budget.
okay,
More people are falling off ladders this coming year than did last year.
The,
Whatever reason.
no, the expense of putting those people through the hospital and paying for the repairs and the litigation, which everyone thinks that because we're a city, we have tons of money. So let's go sue Lake Worth Beach because ha ha ha.
then they find out.
Yeah, but so that's what happens is that they look at all the trends. They look at, how much it costs to put people in the hospital, their medical bills, the repairs, and the legal fees that go along with that.
So it's an estimate, not a bill that we received or a bill that we expect.
Yes, they tell us how much we should budget every year, and they've done it for 20 years. I'm sorry, Commissioner Malega.
I want to say thank you for that, because as we know, Tallahassee has been trying to pass a really crappy bill that will show what our outlay could be, and this could have 3 zeros followed behind if the bill would have passed.
Some of the bills that we were hearing is that we actually got lucky with a 40% increase. The West Coast was getting triple digits.
Yeah.
So they said people were getting increases from 40 to 240, and we actually got lucky that we were that double digits, not triple. I know it doesn't make us feel better when we're
Yeah.
trying to find
But I
it,
just think
but
this is, I mean, I think it's better for us to be on the safe side with this
Absolutely.
than to be struggling to pay somebody out and going, what, we should have thought bigger, because if this, one of these bills comes back this coming session, we could be looking at
They
having
wanted
a
to
big
raise,
issue.
yeah, they wanted to raise
To
our
2 million.
deductible to like $2 million. Yeah, thanks.
I know, we've been trying,
Commissioner
we've been trying to figure out ways to get it lower, and there just isn't. We've looked at all of our fees. It's not as, I'm not as lucky as I have been on the health insurance side. How's that? But I have been trying.
Understood. Commissioner Stokes.
I had a similar question about what Commissioner Malega brought up. Did any of those bills pass? None of them. Okay,
No,
because I
it
knew a
failed
lot were
on one
coming.
side, it didn't get carried over on the house.
Okay, but
So-
they could be coming back.
They are
will
saying
always
it's gonna
bring
come
them back.
back next year,
I just,
in 6 months.
I really would love for a way as a city for us to be able to communicate to the public about the impact that some of this legislation can have. It's not political. It's if this bill
We can
passes,
do it
whoever
as
sponsor or
educational.
whatever,
Mhm.
this is the impact it's going to have on the city and the taxpayer and the services we can provide. So I don't know if we can get with either legal, because I also know they passed other bills making it hard for cities to take positions on things. So they've done a lot to kind of tie our hands, but I'd like to see what we can do because the public deserves to know.
We'll work closely with legal on that, because it is, a sticky situation.
And our
How we
lobbyist
deal
who
with it.
can, who's tracking all this stuff and can
Right.
say, these are the bills that are going to directly negatively impact the city's budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Lauren. And then the next, we'll have the following funds did not have any changes from the first workshop. It was the court remediation, debt service fund, the golf course fund, employee benefit fund, the information technology fund, and the garage fund. We'll also be.
I'm sorry, Yannick. Can you share the screen so
Yeah,
that people at home can see?
it's up.
Maybe
Oh.
two.
It's up for you, but I just checked YouTube. It's not up there. There should be something on the bottom where it says share screen. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corey.
No.
I'm telling you.
So the next, other topics that we're going to be discussing today will be the Stantec modeling, which will be covering the general fund and the beach fund. We'll also talk about the CIP and the 5-year plan, the grant schedule. In the previous workshop, you requested a schedule of all the grants that we have. It should be in the handouts that we provided you today. The amortization schedule update I just kind of like gave you an update about the bonds that we have, and the balances that are remaining of those bonds. And last but not least, we'll talk about the ARPA, an update of the ARPA funds. Okay, so before we move to the Stantec modeling, and I have David here from Stantec, I would like to go over the general fund and the beach fund. So as mentioned earlier, this is the summary of all the governmental funds, the general fund, with all those surpluses that we covered. I mean, I don't know if you would like me to go over them again, or it's pretty much the same thing. I'd rather just go over to, let's move to the general fund.
Quick question.
Sure.
I think I'm on page 429.
Yes.
Employee benefits, that's whenever we talk about salaries and benefits, employee benefits is that orange line stuff, right? Or is that something different?
It's a internal service fund also, employee benefits. So that's like when for all their health insurance, it goes into that fund to pay out the claims.
Okay.
The one that Lauren was was referring to is the property and liability insurance. This is the employee benefits is more for like the health and dental and life insurance.
And what is the other fund?
The other part is the other smaller funds. I would assume golf.
They're all golf fund, building
Golf funds,
permits,
funds,
debt
yes,
services,
yes.
everything else.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
Mhm. Let's go to the next page. So for the all right, so this is the general fund revenues, approximately 45.3 million. Mainly consist, if you go look into the detail, revenues consist of mainly property taxes. And also transfers from utilities. And these are the administrative
Franchise.
charges and franchise fees. If you go to page 1 of your binder, you'll get the breakdown of the taxes.
And they're all running about roughly 8% on the
Yes,
franchise fee.
With
The
the-
administrative costs vary probably.
it varies. But remember for the electric is the only exception, because we had to help balance the budget. It went down to 7.25%.
Eight for everybody, 7 point.
For everyone else, but as far as the franchise fees, it was 8%. And you can see on the screen, the breakdown of all the different taxes, which also includes, by the way, CRE, which is a pass-through. Okay. And the transfer form, if you go to page 6 of the binder, you'll see the breakdown of all your franchise fee and indirect charge.
Page 6.
Yes.
Mhm. And taxes, is that solely property taxes or is there other?
No, there's also mainly CRA and property taxes. So that should be on page 1.
So the gas tax is separate. It's not included in that. Are you trying to ask are there other types of taxes we collect?
Yeah,
other
the
than
breakdown of
property?
the 21 million. Yes. So we have 16, so it's all. It should be on page 1 of your binder, which you have all, you should see that 21 million. That's the subtotal. Okay.
And intergovernmental revenue, that's coming partly from the county. That's the stuff that Commissioner Malega wants us to bump up. Is that correct?
The intergovernmental revenue, that's mainly from the states, state and county, state revenue sharing. And that's where you see it's on page 2. Go to page 2. It's on the screen. You'll see that 5% increase that we updated for this workshop. And you can see that historically, it's been, if you just look at the 2022 and also the year to date, we're definitely gonna pass that on what we had initially budgeted for, because we had no increase for the first workshop. We did not have any increase at all. Yes.
And transfers from, or contributions. I mean, I think Commissioner Malega made a good point that we should all be talking either to state officials or county officials or both and asking them for help. Do we currently have a pie slice anywhere that gives us an idea of how much currently comes in from the county to this pot? Or is it some small portion of other?
It will be a total of 5 million from the county, I would say.
And that's in, where does that show up in this pie chart?
In this pie chart one, it's not separate. Well, yes, it is. It's in the orange one. I'm sorry.
So it is, that does include county.
Yes. Because we have the revenue sharing and sales tax and also the county contribution of the, that's for the fire pension plan. It's a pass-through also. It's only 120,000, but mostly it's state revenue sharing.
I guess what I'm trying to get an idea of is, as we talk about, ways to bring in more income into the city from anybody who will give it to us, which I think is a good idea. As a starting point, it's useful to have some idea, what are we getting from the state, from the county now, and how much play is there in that? How much negotiation? If we're very friendly and bring them lots of flowers and chocolate, can we move that up by $50,000 or can we move that up by 5 million? And having some idea of what it is now gives you some idea of, you're not likely to double it, but you might get, I don't know, another 10%, another 20% if we're very nice to them. Just to have some idea of what those numbers look like.
One of the questions I have is who keeps up with the mobile home licenses that we're supposed to be clapping on? Cricket, so I'm gonna go with nobody does. Okay. Next question.
Everybody loves a pop quiz.
William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. As part of code compliance and doing the use and occupancy inspections for the mobile home parks, we have turned over to the tax collector those mobile homes that did not have a registration number or the ones that we could not identify who the owner was. Our guess is that the compliance rate with them being registered is far higher than it was. I won't mention which one mobile home park, but one of them at one time, less than half the mobile homes were actually with the tax collector.
So the ones that you have turned over to the tax collector, do they go after them? Do they get money from them?
We also apprise the owner of the mobile home park that they've got unlicensed mobile homes in their park and they should be licensed. And they're looked at as motor vehicles. And in the worst case, they could have been towed. But we don't want to do that.
Don't do that. And the other thing I was gonna ask is, I was really not, this isn't for you, William, I think this is one for, I was really shocked to see the alcoholic beverage license number go down.
Well, we've reached our maximum.
I mean, with all the approvals of the new restaurants and the things we've had in the building selling, and I just,
They're replacements of other
but
restaurants.
the fees went up. So I don't know how that went down. I just think that sometimes we need to keep an eye on, because we all know how much money that this wonderful county collects on impact fees that we don't get any of. So we have to try to figure out how to make it up somewhere.
Well, yes,
ahead.
so for referring to the alcoholic beverages licenses, right?
Yeah.
So we could, as you can see, we didn't change it from last year. I guess we try to stay conservative, but if you look at the year today, we already at 46,000. So that number could easily go to 60,000.
But you won't know that until the state sends you the report, correct?
Yes, I would rather just wait till see how it turns out for this fiscal year before we
Did legal ever give us an update on what happened with the lawsuit regarding impact fees? Wasn't that Royal Palm Beach was trying to?
Ms. Gardner.
Did the city did lose? I'd like to get an update on. Oh, here comes William. He's an attorney, dear.
I'm not going to give you a legal opinion, but last I heard, the decision or ruling that was handed down was in favor of Palm Beach County.
So maybe we need to have legal look into that because the impact fees are being collected that we're not getting. I think.
Well, where I feel the city has, and the cities as a group have a stronger basis for a lawsuit is to sue the county based on where the money's actually being spent
Correct,
versus how it's being collected.
correct.
Right.
We can circle back.
I mean, it sounds like it must be a complete mystery. Where it's being spent. He walks away. He walks away. He knows not to answer. You know where it's not going. Ms. Jones.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that when we talk about going after funds, that we come up with a plan so we know what is a realistic avenue to follow and what's not as much. I don't know that I know the county has a lot of their own expenses. I think that they'll help fund certain projects and things like that, but I don't think if we just ask nicely, they're going to give us money. I know that they passed a very, very small decrease in their property taxes last year that wasn't going to significantly help any of the property owners. But they are, certain departments in the county are on hiring freezes now because they're trying to figure out with the decrease that they passed. When they decided to lower property tax by a smidge, it didn't really help us, but it did create, less money. So there are departments on a hiring freeze at the county. So I just don't think they have a ton that they're playing with.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving right along.
So next we'll go over the general fund expenses. The table at the bottom is the one that has the total for this second workshop. The changes we discussed earlier. Again, well, I just wanted to add some clarity on the non-departmental, which is on page 29 of the binder. That includes the debt service, the portion that the general fund has to pay, as well as contractual services, which includes ADP, Stantec, OpenGov, and Davenport also. So we have a total of expenses of approximately 45.2 million. So that's, again, that leaves us with the surplus of approximately 151,000 for the general fund. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions for the general fund?
Yeah, I did have one. What is what's that?
Everyone else is using their light.
Oh, light. I thought I heard Mike.
No, light.
Okay,
Just
there's my light.
there, thank
Can you explain what non-departmental is?
Yes, so these are expenses that are not assigned to one specific department. So we have them in the non-departmental expenses like the debt service. We can't just assign that to one specific department. And like studies conducted by like Stantec or Davenport or ADP is not just it's just not one, it's not assigned to one specific department. That's why we have it classified as non-departmental. So as I said, it's on page 29 of your binder. That's where you'll see the breakdown.
Okay.
Actually, it's at the bottom where you have the non-departmental section. So you'll notice that the largest expenses is we have the contractual services. Page 29. Screen. Way down. And on page 30, that's when you see that transfer from to CRA. What we collect from CRA taxes, we transfer it over to CRA. It's a wash, yes.
Pass through the.
So it's 3.5% to CRA, and we have a total of $1 million, approximately $1 million all non-departmental, which includes debt service of approximately 857,000 and the 200,000 contractual services.
And that debt service, we're going to get to later, that schedule of bonds, which will tell us what the different
Right. What different
components of
requirements,
that are.
yes.
Okay, Ms. Malika.
Who was Capital Pro?
Transfer to capital project.
So it's that's a general transfer to any capital projects that the general fund is helping
Yes.
fund. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions for general fund? We come forward. Okay. All right, the next page. Actually, I have some formatting issues, so we go to page 8. That's what we have, all the other governmental. You'll notice for the handouts, what we added was for those individual other governmental, all those individual funds, with the pie charts. So as you can see with the building permit, that's the one that increased by the 250,000 because of that one contribution they had to make for the fleet maintenance facility. And as far as the revenues, there were no other changes from the first budget workshop. Go to the next page. And there we have the expenses for the other governmental as well, a total of 26.4 million. Here you have a breakdown of what was in the first workshop and also what we're in the second, what we're presenting to you in the second workshop. We will quickly go through these individually. So with that said, I would like to start with the beach funds because we have Stan Tech here. As soon as we're done with the beach fund, they'll be presenting the model. So the beach fund starts at let's see, that would be page 15 or 29, which is also on the screen.
15 of the handout.
Yeah.
Yes.
15.
Okay.
Can we get handout for the audience?
I don't think they printed them out there huge. What?
In the future?
Additional.
I don't think it's a bad idea. These are many.
We'll put them on the website.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're on the back. They're on the backup. Are they?
I think we only had the summary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they should all be up there.
Yeah, we just had the summary. All right, so the beach funds, we have a total revenues of 4.8 million. Which is mainly from parking facilities and rents royalties and violations. And we have the total expenditures of about we're almost breaking even with 4.8 million as well, mainly from beach parking and the beach. But if you go to the next page with the tables, you'll have a breakdown of the revenues and expenses. So starting with the revenues, you can see that transportation user fees are the ones that we have the largest with the $3 million.
Is that the parking? What is
It
that?
includes the parking, yes.
Okay.
So if we go to the beach one on your binder, you start with page 37. You can see the first parking meters, we have approximately 2.8. $2.8 million. Then we have parking fines. You have 589,000.
Are you on page 37?
Yeah, 37.
Where do you see the parking fund?
Like 354.
So you can see on your screen, you have the parking meters taxable, which is about 2.7 million or 2.8 million. Okay. And then you have your parking fines, is the next largest chunk, which is approximately 590,000. Okay.
Oh, there.
And then you have your,
So we bring in.
okay,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that when you did the leased properties, you calculated in the new leases that were just negotiated
yes,
for the projections. Cool. Because it's not that big of a difference between the actual on the patio area to your projections for next year. So I was inquiring, went from 49,000 to 57.
Separate from the.
Right. So the patio area would be there, so like Benny's, Mamma Mia's, all that actual area, right? Wasn't there a bigger increase though on their square footage when we renegotiated their leases? Not that much,
not for the first year.
not for the first year,
For
okay,
the second year, I think that's what you see.
okay, thank you.
So. PDF. All right, so that's for the beach. Then we move on to the expenses. For the expenses. We have the largest department, obviously, being the beach department. You can see in the breakdown of the second tables, the third table. And we have. So there we have total salaries and benefits being approximately 2.5 million. And the operating being on 2.2 million. So which, again, we're almost breaking even with the beach fund with a total revenues of 4.8 million as well. Any questions with the expenses?
Mr. Boyd?
At one time, and I don't know how long ago, and I don't know whether we still are, but at one time we were paying for law enforcement officers to be up at the beach. Do we still do that? Is that still part of the beach fund?
I believe so. There's an allocation of the PVSO.
Where would that show up in this?
Wait one second.
Wasn't it other contractual services when I asked about it?
I want to see. It's on the
Yeah,
contract.
Yeah, because I asked about that during the last workshop.
Page 3. Okay. Yeah, I want to see other contractual services
On which
on
page?
page 38 at the bottom. The last line item.
So that's proposed to be 172.
107, yes.
And can we find out why that's not part of our regular PBSO?
It is actually, it's just a breakdown. So we have the largest portion being general fund. And I think we have the beach fund and then the electric fund. They have an allocation also.
And here comes Lauren.
Sorry, I had to unbox myself from the table.
You're back in there.
Good evening, Lauren Bennett, Director of Leisure Services. Originally, It was not part of the contract with PBSO, but once we realized we actually did not have enough coverage for the beach, it was a secondary add-on. So it was a separate contract at one point. I think it's all been meshed into one, but the allocation hits the beach fund because they're strictly for the beach fund and a small portion of the downtown.
But it's included in the, it's part of the total.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to make a quick correction. So it's actually, it's actually on page, I just came across it. It's actually on page 43. If you turn to page 43. Towards the bottom, you'll see other contractual services for 315,000.
Yeah.
And the breakdown of that amount is on page 82. So you have to make it with those.
So it's 300,000.
Yeah, but go to page 82. There's more than just the PBSO. So the PBSO total is 272,000.
Page 82.
Page 82, yes.
I just want to say one thing. The first year that I was here looking at the budget, they handed us these books that were about 4 feet wide, and I could not make heads or nor tails of them. And Yannick, what you've done to make this understandable,
Yes,
that actually I can actually follow along is, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Much appreciated.
Are we on page 82? Okay, so you can see that the PBSO is at 272,000, it's just a slight increase of 5%. I mean, no, 5,000, I'm sorry. Yes, so we have janitorial services in there and landscaping.
Oh, this is just for the beach.
Yes.
And Marquee Landscaping is an outside contractor. I'm getting nods from the other side. Commissioner Malay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna be devil's advocate. Ready?
She's in a mood today, be careful.
I am gonna move because I'm fighting a bad cold. PBSO and those other two entities, do we calculate that into CAM for the renters that are up there?
The CAM is only charged off of what the expenses are for the building itself. I would have to go back and check the formula for PBSO because I don't recall if they hit that, but I don't think Marquez does.
Okay, what about the janitorial?
Yes, that's in there.
Okay, can you find out on the PBSO, because if we are providing, and I'm just thinking outside the box. If we are providing a level of safety and security to the renters that are up there. I know it's a stretch, I want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. Make sure that if we're supposed to be, we are, and if we can't, then we're not. You know what I mean? Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Not that I want to add any more to your list.
Or to the rent at the casino.
I'm just putting on the record.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up. Oh. I'm sorry, I was in trial, but
So. Any other questions?
no.
For the beach one? All right, so I'd like to turn this over to Stantec. David who's on the panel. He's gonna go over
Where should we be paperwork wise?
the colorful.
Oh, that one.
Yes.
Oh,
But
the one that says Stantec?
David, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sure. Do you want to drive the presentation or do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Can you unshare?
All right. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
All right. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. Again, Dave Hyder with Stantec. And I'm here this evening to talk about the 2024 Integrated Financial Sustainability Analysis that we've completed for the governmental funds. And so in terms of our agenda this evening, what I'm going to go through is just to remind you of the process that we go through as we look at the sustainability of the various funds. Then I'll be talking this evening about the beach fund and the general fund and how we look at those going forward, not just fiscal year 24, but over a forecast period. And then I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. And I'm also fine to take questions during the presentation, so feel free to interject. In terms of the process, so what we're doing here in the integrated financial sustainability process is really taking the budget that you develop for fiscal year 24, and then we're looking out over a 10-year projection period. And so that gives us a forecast of changes in demands on the system, changes in operating costs going forward, as well as any capital improvement plans, things like repair and replacement needs in the systems. And we're doing this for each of the funds. And ultimately what that allows us to do is it provides that framework to consider different scenarios and do sensitivity analysis. What happens if inflation is a higher level, or if we see revenues don't increase as much as we anticipate, or things of that sort, and run those sensitivity analysis, and then check those sensitivity analysis against some of the metrics that we have for the funds. So are we able to meet the reserve targets that we have for the funds? What's the interaction? Because we are modeling the enterprise funds as well as the general fund. What's the interaction between the interfund transfers? And so we're able to look at all of those items. And then ultimately, what this provides is a long-term financial management plan. So it gives us a forecast of our revenues and expenditures on the system, lets us plan for capital and how we may fund that capital, whether it would be through cash or through future borrowings. Look at whether we're meeting our targets, and then ultimately, what does that do to the property owner or the ratepayer? So that's the overall process. In terms of the analysis for the governmental funds, some of the key factors that are included in our analysis is we are using the unaudited fiscal year 22 financials as our starting point. So we use that to give us a sense for the cash balance that's available within each of the funds. And then we're using the amended fiscal year 23 budget, and then the proposed budget, given the changes that Yannick's gone over this evening, for fiscal year 24. And that's factored into our analysis. For those funds that do have CIPs, we're including those capital costs. We'll talk about that with the beach fund. We're not assuming any increases in the governmental funds in terms of rates for fiscal year 24. And there's no additional long-term debt assumed for the governmental funds in 24. And then finally, we are using the fiscal year 24 preliminary tax roll from the property appraiser as our starting point for revenues for fiscal year 24. So in terms of the beach fund, some of the key inputs are shown here. And many of these items were just discussed. So for fiscal year 24, the revenues, which are primarily from the parking meters, they do assume an increase in the parking meter transactions over the prior year of about 6%. But there is no assumption in terms of an actual increase in the parking meter rate, just assuming increase in transactions. As we play that forward over future years, we are assuming that those transactions continue to grow, but at a lesser rate. So we're assuming about a 1% growth in transactions in fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. And then at fiscal year 28, we're assuming at some point you're going to reach a constraint where you can't have an increase in transactions. We are looking at potentially an adjustment to the parking meter rate of about a quarter in fiscal year 28, which would bring it up to $3.25 from $3, and then potentially gradually increase that over the next couple of years to get it to $4 by fiscal year 2031. And that's similar to what we talked about last year, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. In terms of the beach property improvements, what we're including in the analysis is a couple capital items. So in fiscal year 24, there's $200,000 for the lifeguard tower replacement. And then we're also including $500,000 for the beach property, ocean rescue, beach property maintenance staff offices. So that's incorporated. And then for planning purposes, we are assuming there's about $200,000 a year in future years, fiscal year 25 through 33, for just ongoing repair and replacement. There is some debt associated with the beach funds, about $500,000 currently in annual debt service from prior debt issuances, but we're not assuming any new debt issuance going forward. So with all that said, this is what the 10-year forecast looks like here on the panel. And I can kind of orient you a little bit in terms of the what we're looking at. So up at the top, we've got the fiscal years, obviously. And since the key driver here is the metered parking rate, we're showing that currently $3. And as I mentioned before, we're looking at potentially increasing that by a quarter in 2028, and then gradually increasing that up to $4 by 2031. Below that, we just have a total cash flow analysis. So this shows whether there's a surplus or a deficit in the fund. And what we are showing is that in fiscal year 24, there's a deficit of about $700,000. And that's because we are funding those capital projects that I talked about earlier from cash. So that shows up down here, the 0.7 million. Below that, we have whether you're how much your ending balance is within the fund, and then the target balance that we'd like to try to meet, which is 3 months of your expenditures. And so then if we look at the outputs down here at the bottom, we have the working capital fund, which is the cash balance within the fund. And you will notice because of those deficits that we were showing up above, we are gradually spending down that cash balance, but it is still above that black line, which is essentially the target line that we want to maintain within the fund, which is 3 months of the expenditures. Over to the right, you can just see the total cash coming into the fund. That's the black line. The orange line is the total cash going out of the fund. You'll notice a little bit of a spike in 2024 because of that cash funded capital. Down at the bottom, the CIP spending, again, that's 700,000, and then the 200,000 that we're assuming going forward with some inflation included. And then finally to the right, we have just the expenses by type. So you have your personnel services in purple. The dark blue is your just operating maintenance expenses. The light blue is the cash funded capital. And then you do have a little bit of debt, as I mentioned, about $500,000 in annual debt service. So overall, no, at this point, you can fund, in our opinion, that those capital projects from fund balance. We're able to maintain cash balance above the target for quite some time. But if the trends continue, we think at some point in time you would need to change the metered parking rate. So I can pause for a moment if there's any questions on the beach fund.
Mr. Stokes?
So I just wanted to double check because this is based on last year's financials and our budget. This does not include any rent coming in from that second floor restaurant, correct? So like, we're not going to predict, we don't have an actual tenant up there yet, so we're not planning for that. So that will help us significantly if we can get somebody in that upstairs.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
I
Yep.
think what he wanted to point out, like, if the beach fund wanted to fund its capital projects, that they will still be in a good position as far as fund balance is concerned, which is usually 25% of their operating prior year's operating expenses.
I hate these questions. When is the last time we increased the parking at the beach?
2018.
Okay. So one thing I would like to see us bring back is where we are in line with other area municipal owned beaches. As far as the parking hourly rate goes. I have
Are we in line?
that.
Here
Don't we
comes
have,
Lauren.
like something with the county,
Well,
because
no, we can, I don't think they,
not for parking.
Not for parking.
we just can't
we
park.
just can't change the access to the parking,
Yeah.
but we can charge whatever we want. But if they're charging less than us and they're next door.
They charge it, they actually follow our lead with
Oh, okay.
Cruiser. So as soon as we increase, they increased as well. I have a spreadsheet actually that shows where we're at with other cities. And we also did our own comparison. I know Stan Tech can do it live, but we took our 2022 actuals and we compared them at what it would be if we did $3 on weekdays and $3.25 on weekends. So I can make a photocopy and I can provide this to you guys if you'd like.
It's the most expensive beach to park at.
Oh, Palm Beach.
They actually have, they're on the street, that's street parking?
Yeah, they're $5 an hour.
Plus they pass the end user fee down to the user, correct?
Yes,
So it's more like 530.
which we will be doing as well.
Right.
So
Surprise.
have you calculated how much we're gonna increase our revenue once we do start passing that end user fee on?
That I have not done yet.
We're
So
gonna
that's
do,
not in this.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for David.
I would.
Yeah, no, it's not in there.
So
It's
do we-
not in there.
I wouldn't be opposed since we're doing the budget and we're gonna be looking at our rates and fee schedules to having the conversation if we did increase. Even if we, I mean, I hate to say, it, even if we increase during season, is that capable? Are we capable of doing that?
Yes.
Could we just-
We could just come back to you with a budget amendment saying.
No, I'm saying like, could we have different fees?
Parking wise, yes.
Yeah.
We could have different
We could have
parking
a
fees.
seasonal
There could be high season, there could be low
And
season.
restaurants do, everybody does it, you guys. They capitalize on the people that come into the city, and if our beaches are being used. And we're providing a great oceanfront experience. I'm all in favor of us raising our parking rates during season and capturing some of that capital.
I don't.
You know, I'm not saying astronomical, like we're not gonna, provide valet parking or anything, but I mean, I would love to see what those numbers look like, even if we only did it for 4 or 5 months.
Great. Ms. Stokes.
In line with that, I would, before we bring back any proposals, I'd like maybe for the commission to get an overview of the different models for parking out there, the variable or the demand parking, like what are. There's a bunch of different ways you can charge for parking. So I think first give us all an overview of the different possibilities out there so we can digest that and start thinking about any kind of new direction we might want to go into.
I know some other places, Nellie and I were just talking about do zones. I wouldn't suggest that. That's really confusing. I would suggest a pretty straightforward, either weekday or weekend or season versus non-season, but we would have to have a conversation of how exactly you want to define season, because is it when we start seeing them come, or are we going to pick months? That's,
We have to pick a day.
I mean, yeah, we could say,
We have the
November
data.
through,
May
I would say,
1st.
most people like November to the end of April.
Well, we should have the data, the usage right now. Be able to, right, can we poll?
it's COVID's kind of messed that up
Yeah.
as far as when they're coming and how long they're staying. I mean, I would obviously agree with November through after Easter is typically season, but I would just need a finite season timeframe.
Well, they're learning how to raise more money. Thank you. Commissioner McCormick, Mr. McGoy.
Are we constrained at all by our agreement with the county as far as changing the rates at different times of the year?
Not the
That's
rates, no.
one. And the other is, are we allowed to charge differently for Lake Worth residents than other people?
Well, the Lakewood residents have the pass.
There's the pass, but if they don't have the pass,
They
then
regular.
I don't have a way to check if they're a resident at a meter.
I don't think it's, I think if you're at
I
a
think it'll
meter,
encourage them to get I think it'll encourage them to get the park pass if we raise
Yeah.
rates.
and how do we do now as far as, at one time, you had to come get a decal. We did various things. I don't remember how it landed.
It's all online now through a digital parking decal via your license plate.
I still
And-
think we should get a decal
We did
with
last
the
year.
year on that.
I think we did.
We had them last year.
Yeah, we did. I have one on my truck.
Yeah.
You
Well,
had to ask, you had to go and get one.
You don't have to have one. The digital is what
Right,
does the
but it's
trick.
an
But
honor.
people like.
honor badge
Would you like me to have commemorative stickers
We would
printed
like-
for this year?
with the year on. I'm saying, no, it's yours.
I'm
With the
being
year
cheap.
on.
I was waiting for the request to
I
come
mean,
through
people
before
have them
printing
all
them.
the way down their windshield, and I think we've talked about this before. And to have the year on, it really is, there's something satisfying about saying, I'm a proud Lake Worth Beach resident that's been here forever. So even though it's.
Sorry, as a millennial, that makes you cringe.
You can-
Sticker on your car.
It's like when people take their orange or yellow decal on the license plate, instead of covering it, they just keep moving it all the way. around.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you got 6 of them, you're like, that's.
No,
not
but
what's
I mean, a lot of cars I see, I mean, the old 88 Volvo's got a bunch of stickers on it. So I would like to see that, to come back. I have people,
We can have a commemorative sticker made.
yeah, just,
Yeah.
I mean, it won't do anything, but it'll be the year and, yeah. I'd like to see that.
My question was, do we sell out? Is there a fixed number of the beach permits for Lake Worth residents?
There's not a fixed number, but it's pretty even across the board from year to year. As far as like how many people buy
So
them,
if
yeah.
somebody wants to get one, they pretty much, there's not much constraint on that.
No,
Okay.
To push a lot more people to buy it is gonna decrease their value because you might show up and there's no spot for you.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'll be having a conversation with the city manager about adding additional resident parking spots at Old Bridge Park. Because the county does not have a say in that one.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving right along.
So David,
Okay,
We forgot about David.
All right, so we'll move on to the general fund. So some key inputs assumptions in terms of the general fund. You're continuing to see strong property value growth. So over the past 5 years, the average property value growth has been about 14%. And based on the preliminary tax roll for 2024, it's going to be 14.7%. So to be somewhat conservative, we're assuming that that's not going to continue at that level. So we are doing a gradual step down assumed in future years in terms of continued property value growth. As Yannick mentioned, one of the revenues for the general fund is the franchise fees. So from the other enterprise funds, they make up about 17% of the total revenues for the general fund. And we are reflecting that 7.25 of the gross revenues for the electric fund. And then for all the other enterprise funds, we are assuming the 8%. And we're assuming that in fiscal year 24, but then going forward, we're assuming that everybody's at 8%. And when we talk about the enterprise funds in a couple of weeks, we can play with what impact that has on the electric fund. In terms of the projected expenses and revenues, they are in alignment over the projection period, given our assumptions. We're assuming continued cost inflation, no increases in the millage, but we are assuming that growth in property values. And so what it looks like here, similar setup to the beach fund. Up at the top, we have what the millage rate is. Again, we're assuming no change to the millage rate, which is about 9 cents currently. You can see the taxable value increase over the last year, and then over for fiscal year 24 at that 14.75. And then we're assuming going forward that would drop down to about 6% going forward. That is really the key variable. If it stays at 14, obviously the general fund's going to do even better. If it drops off at, a greater clip than 6%, that would have an impact. You can see per the discussion, the budget, we are showing a surplus of about $150,000 in fiscal year 24. And then given this level of property tax value increase, we are forecasting continued minor surpluses in the general fund. As I mentioned, property projected growth at 6%. And then we are looking at the target in terms of trying to maintain that 3-month expenditure target, or 25%. Given this forecast, we're right at that target, just a little bit above it in fiscal year 24. And then going forward, your cash balances within the general fund do exceed that target. Again, obviously, the big variable there is the changes in expenditures as well as the changes in taxable value increases. But over to the right, you can see under this projection, the cash in and the cash out are very much aligned. So given this forecast, the general fund looks healthy. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have on the general fund.
Mr. McVoy and then Ms. Stokes.
Couple questions. So basically, from 25 on, you're assuming 6% per year increase in property value, or taxes coming from property values. And at that 6%, our cash in and cash out stay right about even. So that's basically saying that our expenses are expected to go up by about 6% a year.
True.
That understanding correct?
It is. You're generating a little bit of a surplus each year, so it's a little bit, but yeah, yep, it is minor.
And is there a basis from other sources of information that assuming expenses are likely to go up in a general fund by about 6% a year, is there a basis for that, or is that like I have in my head that water expenses have tended to go up about 3% a year. Is there some basis for that 6?
Yeah, we do look at each individual line item within the budget and make assumptions in terms of personnel, health insurance, things of that sort. It's been, I'll be honest, difficult in recent years given what we're seeing due to inflation. So we're working from, you could argue a somewhat potentially inflated budget. We're hoping that we're not going to continue to see, expenditures grow at the level that they've grown. So we're not, speaking of a water and sewer, we've seen 15% increases instead of the threes. But we're not assuming that we're going to continue to see at those levels. So yeah, 6% given the mix of expenditures is not uncommon.
Okay. I assume you folks at Stanton have this amazing crystal ball. So since you got this crystal ball for 10 years out, do you anticipate that the problems in Florida with homeowner insurance might put a ding in that 6% and push it down further?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that crystal ball. I mean, we've been forecasting for a number of years, working with the city, and it continually seems to be that property values come in higher than we anticipate. So this forecast, I know last year we assumed, I think it was about a 7% was what we assumed for 24. And so that has just continued to be, under this scenario conservative. We do have, and, could show different scenarios. What happens if it drops to 3%, things of that sort, just how sensitive it is. Obviously, we would start to run some deficits if that's the case. But yeah, we don't unfortunately have that crystal ball to know exactly.
Might be interesting just to see that scenario at, say, I don't know, 3% or 4% or something, to have some idea. I'm thinking sort of the big picture that homeowners are seeing their taxes, well, not the taxes in the city go up necessarily, but their property values go up, so their tax bill goes up. And it's going up if they're paying attention. They notice that 14%. It's not clear to me that our provision of services has gone up by 14%. And that's the kind of thing that I could imagine a homeowner might be concerned about is, well, geez, my tax bill keeps going up. What am I getting better for it? And that's a complicated question. It's probably not in your crystal ball or otherwise, but it's something to be thinking about. That we're getting quite a bit of a benefit from some dramatic increases in property value. We as need to show that we are providing something in return.
Paying our bills. I mean,
that might be.
I understand what you're saying, but.
One of two things, either that we show that we have increased the services that we provide by some nominal percent or in a qualitative way, or that, hey, our bills went up by 14% too. So that we have some way of accountability to people. I think that would be healthy, but that's not a Stanton thing. That's more a.
Okay, who was next? I think the Stokes was next.
You answered one of my questions about the expenses and if that was part of the inflation, and because I know we give our employees raises every year and our police contract goes up every year. But I did have a question about how granular we are with the property taxes. So if you have a homestead property tax, my property taxes did not go up 14% this year. So do we separate out, our property taxes increasing because we have new developments coming online versus individual property taxes going up? I think when you sell your house, we see a bigger jump, but for the people that have lived here, they're not really.
Right. So I would have to say
Paying
it's a combination.
Much more.
It's a combination of people moving here, buying new houses, because we get that number from the property appraiser. As far as the actual breakdown, I would have to.
And
Might
do
be
we
nice
take
to
out
get that.
the CRA pass-through costs because a lot of the new
It is. Yep.
developments that come online are in their district, so that increase doesn't come to us, it goes to them.
Right.
So is that taken into account for our general fund?
10 years, we're gonna get this money.
Yeah, for the CRA, it's about 2.5 million, which we collect for the CRA, and then we transfer that out.
So even with that taken out for us, the portion of property taxes that we keep each year, it has gone up 14%.
It increased, I think, 12% to 14%.
Yeah.
That would be, I'd be quite interested to see those numbers.
Display this flex on.
because give some idea of the homestead. Well, it's an information request because I would guess that we're maybe 50% homesteaded, or I don't know what the number is, but
Okay, let's let Ms. Mike ask her question.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, that's two things. Number one, that's why the CRA needs to be redistricted, so we can get a lot of that funding back into us, but also extend them to the south end. But my question is, what is our fiscal policy for the general fund balance? Most municipalities say 10%. Like, what is ours? I don't remember. I know we did fiscal policies 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. What is, do we have, first of all, a general fund fiscal policy? And what is that number?
It's 25% of the previous year's operating expenses.
Okay, thank you.
that's
Thank
the
you.
target.
That's the
Yeah,
total.
and that's what we're reflecting here.
Yeah.
But that is a written policy.
Yes, we have the rain policy, and I think, if not the third workshop, the next workshop, maybe the workshop after, I would like to share that with you to show you where our fund balances are per policy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And real briefly, this is the general fund model, so if I can run that scenario real quick, if you'd like to see it at 3% property
Nice.
tax. And
Thank
if
you.
I run that through, basically, you
Lot
you
of it.
drop below that target and basically deplete the general fund by 2032 under a 3% instead of 6.
It's
So that is a key
very
variable.
sensitive to that.
And that's about the year that we'd be bringing the CRA back to redistricting them.
All right.
All right, any questions for David?
Not right now.
Okay, well, David,
right.
thank you so much.
Yes, appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right. So the next page, so if you turn to page 10, I'll quickly go over the other funds, the pie charts and the individual tables. Page 10 of your handouts, 10 of 29. Page 10. Just stepping down. Yeah, building permit funds.
All right, thank you.
It's also on your screen. All right, so as you can see, we're breaking even with that one because we're just mainly using the
To the penny.
pretty much we're using fund balance as required by state statute to bring down fund balance. So we had 3.8 million, and most of the revenues are special assessment, and the other sources are really just use of fund balance for the most part. And for the expenses, it's the majority of that being the building permits and the other being non-departmental. So if you go to the next page, it gives you permits and fees at 1.4 million for revenues, and the use of fund balance being 2.3 million, 2.4 million, an increase of approximately 250,000 because of that contribution of 500,000 they to the maintenance, the fleet maintenance facility. So then we have the expenses. Again, we're breaking even, and you can see that the non-departmental increased by approximately, from the first workshop, increased by approximately 500,000. Okay. Any questions for this fund? Good. All right, the next one will be code remediation. No changes from the first workshop. It's just a break even of approximately 205,000. The next fund is
And
going,
the reminder was that code remediation is not the whole code enforcement department. That's just fixing up specific things. Is that correct?
correct.
Here comes Mr. Waters.
William Waters again. The Code Remediation Fund includes a variety of things. It includes board ups, lot clearings, demolitions, foreclosure expenses, legal expenses associated with code issues that might be outside of our control, like we had some code cases that had been appealed. So we've had to provide legal to defend those. And then also there is a component in it where we utilize outside code compliance collection service, which has not been very successful, but we have allotted a little bit for that to take into account if that were to happen again.
Thank you. Right, then next one is. Now we already talked about the beach, is it the golf one? Page 18. No changes from the first workshop. Revenues of approximately 1.6 million and breaking even with the expenses. And you go to the next page, you have the breakdown of the table. Again, if you have any questions, let me know.
That includes the rent for the beach club as well.
I believe so, yes. So, sure.
This is when you say, can't wait for the Gulf Stream to come so we can start seeing some more of that money in the city.
The next one is IT, again, no changes from the first workshop, page 20. Total revenues are 2.8, and that's also, we're breaking even with that same, almost the same amount, which is about 15,000. Any questions there? No. Next fund is the garage fund, page 22. Again, no changes from the previous workshop. Revenues of 1.2. Same with the expenses. And the tables on the next page, page 23. Any questions on this garage fund? Okay. Let's move on to the next fund is the self-insurance fund. That's the one that changed, the increases expenses to 4.5 million. The initial revenues were 4.5 million also. So we're almost breaking even on that one because of that big increase of approximately 43%. And we have the details on the table.
So this is the 43% because before it was
We had a
38 or,
surplus. I think we had a surplus of like $500,000 the first workshop.
okay, so this is, I know when we met last week, there was some question about the final number.
Right.
So this is the final number?
It includes the
Okay.
final numbers.
Thank you.
Because if you look at the table, we started off with. Are you on page? Expenses. You can see that we started off with 4 million from the total workshop. Number one. And we ended up on the last table, you can see that it increased to 4.5 million
Where do we get revenues from our
the-
self-insurance?
from the different.
From the departments?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Next one is the employee benefit funds. No changes from the previous one. This one, we have a surplus of approximately 400,000. Mainly with the revenues coming from the different departments also. Okay. And the last one for governmental funds is a debt service fund. This is a wash. This is for the GEO bond, the road bonds for 2017 and 2018. And we have that, we have a different millage rate for it. So it's kind of like a wash, basically. As we generate about 2.1 million a year just to pay whatever debt
spend
we spend about 2.1 million. So if for instance, we get more revenues than than what we had anticipated. What we usually do, we adjust the millage rate, we reduce the millage rate, anticipating to use the fund balances to make up the difference. Okay. Yep. So that's it for all governmental funds. Unless you have any questions, we can move on to the next topics discussion. Since we're talking about debt service, I handed out on the first workshop, you requested, where are we with the bonds as far as, what are the outstanding balances? And how long do we have, how many years we have to pay them? So I'll start, it's also on the screen. So I'll start with the geo bonds for the roads. 2017, that was we issued a bond for 21.6 million. Our outstanding balance as of 2022 is 19.5. And our yearly principal and interest is approximately 1.2 million. And the last payment is scheduled for fiscal year 2047. The same goes with the road funds. For 2018, we issued another one, neighborhood road program. Issued about 17.3 million. The balance as of 2022 is 16 million. And that has a principal and interest of about 982,000 payments, last payment going to 2048.
And this is the one that you just did, the debt services fund
Correct.
of the 2.15 total. That is our total payment for the year. But
20
those,
Right, that's for the 2.151, that's for fiscal year 24. What
Right.
you have here are the a list of the annual payments for fiscal year 23.
right, but that's both of those payments combined.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so we have, we charge a separate millage rate to cover this principal and interest.
Thank you.
Next one is the non-ad valorem. It's in two phases. So we had 2020A, those were for new projects. And you have a list of all those funds that have different projects. And then we have the 2020B, that was the reimbursement for past PAYGO funded projects. So, and all those added up to 26.9 or $27 million that was issued back in 2020. What's outstanding as of 2022 is 24.6 million, with an annual payment of approximately 2.7 million. So the annual payment is allocated among all the different funds. So if we add up all those funds, we have a table with a percentage of each fund all combined.
I'm just curious about what we use to secure some of these different projects. So with my understanding is with electric, stormwater, water, sewer, all those those enterprise funds, they took out a bond that they're all kind of sharing, and then they're going to be paying that back.
The 2020B,
Is that what 2020B is? Just all the capital permits? And then is 2020A, is that all being paid back through the penny sales tax?
sales tax, yes.
So some of the penny sales tax money was used to make improvements with sewer and electric.
Yes, I mean, the penny sales tax will be used to repay those, that portion of the loan.
Okay, so that's all penny sales tax.
Yes.
And then I have a question about that. Because we're gonna be paying that bond back ahead of schedule? Once we get our penny sales tax money, it's not a typical 30-year note.
No, so penny sales tax, I believe, stops in 2026. I'm not sure if it's going to be extended, but as far as it's whatever we have accumulated from the penny sales tax, we have approximately this total 10 million towards repaying the 2020B project. So
Okay,
it will cover, if I may add, it will cover the I believe the general fund, beach fund, Gulf fund, because those are and garage fund also. IT, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, The other ones will be self-funded.
Okay,
So for the next meeting, either the next one or the one after, we'll have a breakdown of the discretionary sales tax. I know in the past it was requested to be presented on a monthly basis. But obviously, as I get through the budget, I'll be able to provide you like an update on a monthly basis of where we are with discretionary sales tax.
so once we pay back that portion of 2020A by, say, 2026, shouldn't our annual payment, principal and interest go down?
What what we're doing is we are allocating the principal and interest payments across the board throughout 2024, which is the last payment of this bond, all combined, right? So right now, as we stand, the majority of the principal and interest for each fund they're self-sufficient. Each fund is self-sufficient right now. The penny sales tax is not necessarily contributing right now, but we have it as committed to reimburse these funds
Right.
as needed. But for now, still have it in that same in the pot, in the penny sales pot as committed.
Okay. I'll have some follow-up questions for you after this.
Okay.
Just to, thank you.
So the next bond is a 2020 utility bonds. So you can see $50 million of that was to refinance the utility bond that we had back in 2013, and also the Siemens note payable. So we refinanced those two for approximately $50 million, and we had also new money for approximately $52 million, with the electric taking the big chunk of it, of $45 million for the SHRIP project, and water $6.1 million, and sewer $1.3 million. The outstanding balance, which is the principal as of 9/30/2022, is about 88 million. And you can see at the bottom of the total, the par amount was about 88 million, but we got a premium of about 14 million. That's what makes up the 102
So we-
million.
We pay 13,700 a year in our debt service to that.
We pay about
Our
five.
premium, that's right.
So the premium is depending on the market, it's the additional funds that were provided. Now, we are supposed to, how we account for it, that premium is amortized over a certain amount of years, and it goes it's offset against the interest expense. So what you have here, the annual principal and interest payments is about approximately $5 million, with the majority going towards the electric fund.
So the total of debt service is about $5 million
$5 million just for that one
that we pay every year.
every year, right? And we're going to be paying that until fiscal year 2050.
Oh, well.
2050.
Oh,
And then the last bond that we recently issued in 2022 was for new projects for the electric, which mostly is the SHRIP project also, 41 million. The water was 2.8 million, sewer was 2.3 million, totaling 46.3 million, with a annual payments of about 2.6 million. However, what I have listed here is 1.5. That's because we only pay in interest since we just issued this one last year. So for 23, we only have to pay the interest, but starting 24, we have to pay principal and interest, which is going to total approximately 2.6 million.
Cool.
So that's it for the update for the bonds.
Hang on one second, Karen. Not right now, but in the near future, could you provide a breakdown, mostly for the public, to understand where $214 million went in infrastructure? Can we get a breakdown, Carmen, from the directors of where these funds were spent? So the people, because Commissioner Mayboy was just saying earlier, 14% increase, and it's. No, I think it's not. The 14% increase in taxes that we're bringing in, and there's a question out there, what do we do with our money and where is our money going?
Right.
When the public hears 214 million, they need to know where this money's been spent. So even if it's not a finite, but just an overall view of here's the projects that we've done, here's the money that's been allocated, and just break it down into simple spreadsheet. This much money was spent on these roads, here's what was done. So the public understands why we did this and where the money went.
Good idea. Oh, Mr. Boyd.
Could you, I'm looking at this is very helpful to have an overview of the bond, so I'm appreciative of that. And I agree with the request that Commissioner Malega made of, let's try to help people understand 200 some million is a sizable chunk. One of my concerns is that the electric fund of that is a very big chunk. And I guess one thing I would wonder is, as we spend that money, is there a way that we recoup any of it? That by spending that lets us charge more for electric, or our quality of our electric is better, so we get more income coming in from it? Or is it just kind of qualitative that we get to feel good that it goes out less often or something or other?
So the repayment of those bonds affects the electric budget. So this will be classified as non-PCA activity transactions, basically. Non-PCA activity.
The base
So
rate.
The base, so that
Right.
affects the base rate. So as you can see, that's the big chunk of they take the big chunk of the bonds. So that's why they also struggling in balancing their budget, because you have to consider this debt service, the debt service in addition to what they have to contribute to the general fund and et cetera. So it does have an impact on it.
Yeah, that's kind of I think what I'm hearing is similar to what I gathered from the Stantec analysis last year, that as you think about the electric utility, obviously we charge people for electric. Some of that is in theory a pass-through that Orlando charges X amount to produce the electricity that we got, and we just pay them.
Mhm.
But the debt service is on top of that, and it's not insignificant. It's a fair chunk of the
It is.
bill. And that's where, sort of similar to what Commissioner Malega was asking, well, help us, and this would be, I guess, a request to the department directors, help us understand what we're getting for that, whatever percentage it is of our overall monthly bill. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Stokes.
I know this is going to probably be part of our conversations when we dig more into the electric fund, but I know we're going to be asked to borrow more money in that fund, and I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm going to need a lot more information before I approve another bond. At the time, I'd asked for more information before we approved the last one, and I know interest rates were so low at the time. It was kind of like, let's go while the iron is hot. It's not like that anymore.
No.
So I want to dig into this more. I know it's my understanding that some of the money from this bond is to be used to do some like either feasibility or some pre-engineering or some work for projects that would be paid out of the next bond. So I'd like to understand if this bond is funding, let's say there's 40 projects, if it's funding like 20 of them through completion and then like the beginning parts of the next 20 to be funded later. If we don't want to fund all of the other 20 later, then we don't need to pay for all the initial work. So there's like overlap going on between these different strip 1, strip 2, strip 3. And I think we need to understand it. And also we need to understand our return on investment and the diminishing returns, because as we continue to harden our system, it gets more expensive to make smaller games. So I think at this point, with all the strip 1, 2, 3 and so on, I would like us to get another like really good analysis of where we are, how reliable we are, how much more we have to go, and then how much of this money was going to be spent to start future projects that have no funding source right now. So we just need to make sure, I mean, this is a lot of money that we're committing to, and it goes through 2050. That these aren't decisions that we can reverse. Well,
No, but our
I
residents
won't
will.
go anywhere.
Um, if I could follow on to that, my concerns are very similar that, a lot of money is being borrowed and that imposes a burden on our residents and customers for a long time. And there's no way to get out of that. Once we borrow that, we're sticking up for it. And if we come along and some future commission comes along and says, well, we need to lower the rates. Well, they're not going to be able to. They'll be in the same bucket that we got in over the last few years that, yeah, we lowered the rates. The way we did that was we ran our reserves into the ground.
Yes.
And now we got to come back and fix that problem. So I totally agree on the need for really, and it's partly going to be a technical analysis, partly going to be a financial of what are we gaining? What have we gained so far? What would we gain in the future? And then I would add to that, as as everyone knows, I'm kind of a electronics geek kind of guy. So I look around at various things. I'm seeing all sorts of stuff available. If you want to have a universal power supply to make sure that you can always have your laptop and your router running, you can do that. You can keep your router running 24/7, whatever it is, 100% of the time, for about $50-$60. You can keep your laptop running. Most of the time it's running anyhow because it's got a battery in it. But if you want to go a little longer, you can add another couple $100. So the reliability of mission critical stuff, and the same would apply if you're running an oxygen machine and keeping somebody's health going or a few other things. They're relatively small electrical usages, and there are alternate ways. You could buy everybody a UPS for $100. What would that cost? And how would that increase in reliability compared to borrowing another 50 million? And, what's the dent? I think we need to be very careful about making sure we are looking at alternate ways, or, a lot of communities are moving toward microgrid kinds of things where they say, you know what, let's identify mission critical stuff in our community. And rather than hardening the whole network, say, hey, let's stick some solar panels and some battery storage on top of the hospital or on top of the school or on top of the hurricane structure, and make sure that we do that and think about the cost of doing that versus the cost of just sort of arbitrary increases in reliability over the whole system. That, if you ask people, do you want free beer or do you want beer, cold beer? Everybody says, sure, I want cold beer. If you say, well, you want cold beer at $8 a glass, or do you want cold beer at $2 a glass, or would you settle for almost as cold beer for, some other price? We need to be very aware, and that information needs to come to us, because I'm not in a position to approve more bonds until we have a very clear understanding of that. So
Thanks. Okay.
What I can do is for the next meeting, for the next workshop, which will cover utilities, we can get more clarity on how we have benefited from this bonds. We'll go over to make sure we incorporate your comments for the next upcoming workshop. That works.
thank you.
All right. The next item for discussion are the grants. So you should have a schedule with all the grants. One, if you can pull down the screen. I think we're running out of time, right?
As if.
I'm sorry. I was trying to avoid the big, long schedules. But
There's not many people in here. I could go run a few copies for the folks that are here. Okay.
yes, so for the grants, what I listed here is the grants that were previously, that were awarded in the previous years and that were recently closed since 2016. And I'm not sure if you want me to go over each one of them, but what I could go into is what as you'll notice, there were some that are in red and for 2022 grants, ones that we applied that got declined. And some that we applied, we're still waiting for the responses. With the biggest ones being from the utilities for the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnership Grid. We should be getting a response, posting our figures this summer. And as soon as we get the grant, you will be notified. Or whatever response we give at that time. And so at the bottom, the last section really covers the grants, a summary of the grants that we're currently managing, which is the ones that are, with the majority, the significant ones is for the Lakewood Road and A Street, the 1.7 million. This is going to cover the biggest ones. And the FDOT 88 citywide sidewalk improvement for 1.1 million also.
And these are grants that are still ongoing.
That was still ongoing, right? So the total of 5.7 million. Okay. So that's it for the grants, unless you have any questions.
No, I just want to make a statement because I talk about grants and citizens ask me about grants, and this is helpful to see that we really do get a lot of grants. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is when we do get a grant, there is number one, managing the grant.
Right.
And number two, a lot of times there's a matching part of that. So there might be a grant that, look, this looks great, but we don't have $50,000 to match it. So I always run into Carmen's office and go, let's get this grant. And she's like, yeah, but so I just, to put it out there. And so we have many, many, many grants coming in.
So the next item for discussion is the CIP. From your binders, you should start at page 173.
You're making us work. $173.
The other nice thing about this is that the page numbers continue.
Yeah.
Like last year was each section started over. What section?
No, this is actually workable. It never was not. Before. Just hide the ball.
You said 173?
Right.
It's like section
Well,
4.
close. I'm right on it. Okay.
All right, so this is the 5-year plan. I think the only update that we did here for community sustainability, we removed, no, actually not community sustainability, I'm sorry, not this page. It's mainly on the next page, page 174. We removed that ERP replacement. Initially it was at 1.2 million. And for the beach fund, we added 500,000 for the beach property, ocean rescue and beach property offices. We increased the public works and fleet maintenance facility to 2.8 from 2.3 because of the contribution from the building fund. And Commissioner Stokes, as you were saying, for the future, for the electric, you can see all those additional funds that they're going to need. I think that's for the 5-year plan. That's the only updates that we had. If you go to page 177, that's when we'll go through the funding of those projects. We'll page 177.
Mhm.
So for the Bristol lighting, we don't have any funding for that for 65,000. For the community sustainability, the lobby area, that we're going to be using the fund balance, 750.
Oh,
Yes, from the building fund.
Sorry, from the building.
The cemetery, we have no funding for that, totaling 1.3 million. For the recreation, for the Osborne, we have a grant for 266,000. We'll have to determine where we're going to get the funding for the 40,000.
Is that the CDBG?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we came up short, so we'll need to determine where the 40,000 will be
Dump
coming
the
from.
commissioner and raise money.
Madam Mayor, just to share why we short there,
yeah.
the county did reduce the funding for that,
For what?
for the CDBG cycle for fiscal year 24, which we're using for the Osborne Community
Oh.
Center. We thought we were going to get $306,000, and we got a letter from the county saying they reduced it to 266.
Did they say why?
No. I think their how you call it, their allocation or funds that they actually received reduced
Oh.
overall, and so it reduced ours.
So all of these recreation things are unfunded at this point.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have some equipment being ordered. Is that? You've been talking about we have some playground equipment coming, hopefully for this, I think it's the beach. Thank you for coming up. You really should have sat on the other side. It would have been a lot easier. We've been talking about, designs for playgrounds for the.
Yes, so I know the city manager has a design concept for the beach that she's about, if you haven't already had that conversation. And then South Bryant Park, we're in the process of the community survey. Actually, tomorrow on social media, we're going to launch the QR code and the second part survey. So we narrowed it down to 2 different styles. We want the community to vote on those 2. And then once they choose that one, we're going to have everybody help vote to pick the color. So it'll all be community
My goodness.
voted on. And we've also done surveying in the community at community events for people to vote in person as well. So both of those are,
That particular.
yes.
Funded.
I left South Bryant in the CIP because if there was any other grants I could go for, normally they need to be on a CIP list, so I did not take it off.
But the beach playground equipment is coming.
As long as I get the green
Yeah.
light.
We're waiting for your feedback, so I'll be speaking to each one of
Okay,
you
great. Thank
at our meeting.
Good.
And I
We
believe
do have funding for that, or we don't?
Yes, you guys actually approved that in a CIP a few years ago, along with the tables and benches from the beach. COVID pricing was insane, so we kind of held off until we could find something that met all the needs and affordable. So we're finally at that point.
And it won't rust in 3 years.
And that's the one thing we focused on this year, was finding material that would last
Thank you.
as best as a beachfront playground can last.
So it's made out of bamboo.
Yeah, right.
Are we fixing the exercise stuff that's not the fully south end of Bryant Park? It's kind of brown painted under.
We are fixing that like every other week. So we put in a CIP for the same style of equipment with pistons for 75,000. I can get what we have at Howard Park, which I'll be honest with you, I would recommend has no moving parts. It's just your body moving for 25,000. So we put in what we currently have, but I mean, I would honestly recommend some stagnant pieces. That way that we don't have to deal with the pistons constantly rusting out.
That might be a good idea. I noticed that there's a fitness walk, you probably know it, on Prince Park,
Mhm.
and that's their strategy there too.
Oh, that's been
The
there
Heart
for
Trail?
35 years. Yeah.
And it's pretty good. I mean, it got good instruction on what to do, and there's next to nothing moving. There's nothing to go bad on.
If you want to go that route, I might be able to find the funds to replace that in my current operating budget.
Well, you're the head of recreation. Let us know what you want to do.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Were we anticipating any grants for any of the parks?
Yes, so South Bryant is in consideration for FERDAP for 50,000, as is South Palm Park. And then we're currently in the process for a $30,000 cultural grant with the state for Street Painting Festival,
Okay,
which also is a lot of back-end management work.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, wait.
Wait, don't go away yet. But
I don't know if this one is part of ARPA or if there's other supplemental requests, how we get things in here that might not already be in here. But I know we expressed some desire to improve Spillway Park, not just from like a recreation point of view, but also from an environmental point of view. So I'd like to know how we can start getting that on the map
Well, there,
and
I think, yes.
how we might get grants to come there. Because if it's South Bryant Park those aren't needs-based grants, right? Based on like low income areas.
FERDAP, no.
Okay.
so we could consider ARPA funds or seek other grants. But right now, we don't have anything specific that we're trying to capture there. I guess, have we determined what type of,
We're in the
Like-
beginnings of trying to plan out what we want that park to, but I would like to get some, to start thinking about dedicating some funding for that part of town.
certainly, we can consider that as we go through this budget process.
Just
So there's a
for
lot of matching
clarification,
grants too.
dedicating, or are you asking just to see it as a CIP?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
We can create a CIP list for
Okay.
that.
thank you.
I would just do a high estimate for dollar amount, probably similar to South Bryant, just because I don't know what style you want. So I can add that in there. That's not a problem, but I don't know the exact dollar amount. So
Yeah, because we don't even know what we want to do with some, with spill rate.
correct.
Thank you. Okay.
And street maintenance, we have the roadway projects funded by sales tax for 1 million. And we have that ADA special sidewalk and ADA special project for 1.4 million. That's which will be funded by grants. And the next department is the building fund. Well, no, the building fund that's been zeroed out. Then we have the beach fund. Now, the first workshop, you expressed some urgency with the lifeguard tower replacement. And that's why I can incorporate that in the budget. So if we have to use our fund balance, the beach fund balance will still be in a good position. But that's alongside with the beach property. So, but that will be, I guess, one of the workshop will work with the members and see if it's including ARPA funds. We could determine whether we're going to go with the fund balance or whether we're going to use ARPA funds or any other means of funding for it. Okay. And the golf fund has approximately 2.2 million of projects that are unfunded right now. The garage, as mentioned earlier, it increased to 2.8 because of that transfer from building fund, user fund balance. And you can see the other projects that are also unfunded. And then the next department is the electric fund. None of those projects are funded right now. And we have the water fund. They're going to be going after some, and I think we'll give you an update for during the next workshop for utilities. They're going after some grants for these projects. Same thing for the local sewer and stormwater. Actually, for stormwater, they did have a grant for 352,000, of which approximately 545,000 is now funded. And the same thing with the regional sewer, they're going to be using pay-go money for their projects and a portion of their fund balance as well. And that, the CIP.
Did we get state money for our stormwater?
This year? No.
I don't know.
So we're about 15.5 million short in that.
Pretty much.
Oh, yeah, good evening, Madam Mayor and Commission, Jamie Brown, Public Works Director, and I'm Assistant City Manager. I just wanted to clarify on the under street maintenance for the sidewalk and ADA special projects, that 1.4 million. Now that is an FDOT lot project. So the way that works is we basically pay up front and then we're reimbursed on a quarterly basis. So that amount, even though it is showing under grant, that is something that would need to be funded. And we're reimbursed for that amount.
That's the 1.43 million.
Correct. It's actually the grant amount would be the 1,277,000. And then the balance would fall on the city. But funding that up front, we would then pay for the construction as we're doing the project, and then we're reimbursed on a quarterly basis. So it's not strictly grant funds right up front.
And it's not full on grant because we have what, I think you said $250,000 roughly component that he was got.
Correct. It's 1,277,000 was the estimated grant amount, and then the total amount of the project was the 1.4. But again, the way those FDOT projects works is you pay up front and then you're reimbursed for it. So
Do you have the money in fund balance to pay for it?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
there's sufficient money in the fund balance to pay for, we just gotta get reimbursed.
Just make sure we get the receipt right.
Okay. Any other questions for the CIP? Okay. So the next item for discussion is the ARPA, that's the last tab. There's no page number on that one, it's just the last tab 5. Very last.
All right, we're gonna take a 5 to 7 minute break. real
Okay.
Quick break.
Sure.
Madam Mayor, it's 8:15. Are you ready to resume?
So ARPA funding, well, first go with the ARPA funding that we received. We received 9.6 million back in September 2021 and the other 9.6 million in July 2022, a total of 9.2, 9.3 million. What you have, the first section that you have is the unrestricted portion. These are the projects that we had initially allocated for those funds. As you can see, from May through June, we've really have only spent money on the mobility plan, the fire station, and the city hall exterior.
I'm
And-
sorry, could you share your screen, please?
Is it a Unicode?
No, you share it right there at the bottom. It should say share screen like you did before.
You don't have it uploaded. Can you see it in Unicode?
So we spent 3,700 on the exterior paint of the fire station.
Correct,
Yes.
and that's as of June, so there
Okay.
could be more spending done.
Because they have
for
some money left, yeah.
Correct, yes, they have some
Um,
money left
And we spent 36,000 on mobility plan. Is that the,
on the mobility plan, yes.
that's the contract that we signed to develop that?
I mean, we're still gonna spend the full amount. That's just the
Right.
part that
Right,
was
this
paid
is what
so
we
far.
have so far as of through June 2023, that's how much we spent. And if you go, also the exterior painting and waterproofing, Jamie, that the project is completed?
Which one?
All exterior paint and waterproofing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Both the fire station and city hall are complete.
And we save some money.
Yes, so we have $30,000 left there.
Good.
And also a quick update on that one, the Wembley gym roof replacement, we won't be needing those funds.
We
for
won't
that
be
project.
needing them?
Yes, according to.
Somebody over here.
Yes.
Somebody said,
That's
read it
correct.
on
We have
Facebook.
an analysis done. We don't need to, that roof does not need to be replaced.
Why
the gym, really?
That's correct.
So that's $140,000 we have to
That is
spend.
correct.
Wait, but why did we think it needed to be replaced?
I think in the past, I don't have a good answer for that.
You find me one.
I'll find you one. Yeah, I think there was a miscommunication in the past, but that roof actually does not need to be replaced. And we went back and looked and had an actual analysis done on it. I mean, there's no sense to put money into something that doesn't need to be done right now.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
There's funds, we can put that toward other things,
Yes.
better purposes. So.
My question is, since we don't need to use that money for the gym replacement, could we offset the money that we're now short on the Osborne Community Center because the CDBG funding is short? We were short 60,000 and change for the Osborne Community Center. 40,000 and change.
About 40,000, yes.
So if we can now take some of the funding that we're not gonna use for the gym roof to cover that expense. Can we do that?
We could.
It's unrestricted.
Right, it's unrestricted.
And we did say we want that done, so I think it makes sense to do.
Yeah, I
that.
mean, now we've already committed, it's 306,000 total, and now we're a little short.
Sure.
Do
that's
we
the
have
widget.
consensus? I mean, I'm just throwing this
How
out.
short are we?
About
40,000.
40,000.
Yeah, let's use this.
Some change, yes.
I think we have consensus. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
That's great, beautiful.
There we go.
Um,
Since we're,
The enterprise resource planning replacement. I think, have we talked about not doing that or what's the status on that?
Yes, we decided not to. We're gonna allocate some of these funds to fund whatever CIP funds that you choose to fund,
Mhm.
the ones that are unfunded.
and
So
So that's $4 million.
that's $4 million, yes.
Well, I like the sound of that. Ms. Milligan and Mr. McBoy?
And well, since we probably now, we have a little around $100,000 from the gym, could we use that money towards Spillway Park? Keep it in Rex is my thought process,
Yeah.
right? If it's gonna be, if we were gonna use it for a recreational building,
Right.
we should still keep it in, using it towards the infrastructure for the rec department. So that could be $100,000 towards Spillway, Bryant Park and all the other playgrounds.
Right. But we don't plan for Spillway Park yet, so.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I would like to keep that
Keep it
money.
in
We've
rec.
already said it's a rec line item.
Mr. McBoy?
Were you thinking that?
I was literally, we were on it.
Mr. McBoy?
Yeah, so we're good on the hundred, on the 4 million for the ERP. I know that there was a lot of talk over a number of years that, oh my gosh, Naviline is the end of the world and we really need to replace it. Are we, and I don't have any intelligent things to say about it whatsoever. I don't know anything about it one way or the other. Is everybody pretty much on board that we don't need to go that direction, that we, whatever the concerns that prompted people to say we did need to go that direction before, that we're addressing them in some other fashion?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yep, let's let the city manager answer that question.
Yeah, so the leadership team has been talking and connecting regarding this situation about the ERP and moving toward Naviline. I think for the most part, that we do have the willingness of the department heads to really dig into Naviline and seeing how it would operate if we put in some training and also demonstrate the capacity and the capabilities of it. So I think many of the departments have not really used it to its fullness. And I believe there's some willingness of the department heads to dive into it and see how it works.
Follow up to that, would it make sense to set aside, maybe not, certainly not the 4 million, but would it make sense to set aside a little bit of funding? I don't know whether there are modules that as we dig in further, we need another Naviline module for this or whatever, or some training to bring in folks, set some aside. Because I guess what I'm wondering is, it seemed like I've heard for a number of years that there was a lot of concern. And I'm guessing that at least some of that concern still exists. Do we need to put a little bit of money into address?
And I think you have a good point about that. I know from community sustainability side, needing to put together some type of ERP system so that we can meet the requirements of permitting, online permitting. So some form of new system will need to be considered. So we'll be having those conversations. But I say we could set aside a little bit for possible, I'm not sure can ARPA be used for training?
Unrestricted.
It's unrestricted.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good
Training
point,
might
training and some
custom.
options.
I don't know how Naviline works, but I don't know whether you can do custom programming to make it do what we want it to do, or interface it to something else with API, whatever.
Mhm.
But it
Right.
seems like there might be some expenses, even if we're not,
And that's true. I think you have a good point there.
And just to make sure we're on the same page, so we are going to for the Osborne, the 40,000, it's gonna be ARPA, and the Sunset Ridge Park.
No,
Spillway
The
Park.
park.
no. I think we're
Parks in
keeping it for parks, we're not gonna pledge funds for a park that we don't have a plan on how to spend it. So we'll keep it in parks, park improvements, playground improvements, keep it in the rec.
Keep it in the rec department.
Keeping in the right department, so I have 40,000 that we're gonna fund for the Osborne.
Right, and then
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the other project?
The 100,
Just the 100.
the 100,000 for,
The tennis courts resurfacing,
no,
well, no, we have
I have a
which
Commissioner Stone's.
I think it would be nice if we each could meet with the city manager too. So are we
Mhm.
allocating funds tonight? No.
No, I think
We're just talking
yeah.
about it. We're just having a
We're
discussion.
making a couple decisions, a couple.
Right,
Right.
but, I think it would be. I would like to get at some point this summer, some money that we can spend in spillway, but at least have available for either matching grants, because we know that. It being right along the canal, we might go after some other improvements, not for playgrounds and rec, yes, but also other things. So I want to leave money open. I don't want to allocate every last dollar and then not have an opportunity if we work over the next month or two to.
And that's what we're doing. We're not receiving.
Yeah,
Well, keep in mind, you can always just do an estimated cost.
Right.
It doesn't have to be specific amount based on a certain plan. So we can put aside $40,000-$50,000 for Spillway Park and then distribute the remaining of the 100 to the other parks. And it can always, depending on the cost, you can always change the line items where needed.
Okay.
Correct.
So we have, it looks like a little, there's the 4 million that we're not going to use. We're going to keep some of it for training and stuff, but it sounds like we have a chunk of money that we don't have allocated anywhere yet.
Well, for the ERP, I suggest let's keep 500,000 there.
Right, I mean, yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Manager.
Yes.
I was going to suggest that maybe I can get with Nellie and look at what possible modules and stuff we might need. So when we come back to discuss ARPA again, we might have a better estimate of how much we might need for training, for modules, for like community sustainability, and what other departments, because I'm not sure either what modules are going to cost, but
Mhm.
I just want to, I don't want to throw something out there and not
Sure.
be close.
And
Okay.
That's a private conversation, Ms. Malega.
Yeah, I do like, or just having this conversation, we can kind of narrow it down more with the city manager later. My question was, can somebody remind me, the housing study we're doing, we funded that through what again? The housing study? You remember how we funded that?
Well, the 15,000.
Is it ARPA? Because it's not listed.
No,
Was
it
it-
wasn't our,
Okay,
no.
okay, so what I was gonna recommend
Contractual services
from John,
from either it's the commission's budget or city manager's budget.
okay, so my question was, because I'm seeing that the legal aid project, we still have, it looks like, God bless you, it looks like 33 and change.
Mhm.
If we, can we use that fund to offset that housing study, since it was supposed to be for housing, the legal aid project, and the money's not being used? I wouldn't want that just to sit there indefinitely.
Well, it says there's 16.
I think there's only 16 left.
16,000.
Update it one time, I have 30.
Oh, that's what we spent 33.
33 is what we spent, for six at the
Oh,
last,
okay.
yeah.
Yes, we spent 33.
So we have
Oh, yeah.
16.
And we're still spending, so.
We still are,
Yeah.
we've gotten an update on how
Yeah.
successful that was.
Right, do we get any accounting of like how that money was spent?
Or how many people
Oh, yeah.
helped.
Yeah,
We didn't,
we have invoices
okay.
and.
Can we get a report on that, how successful we, what was the return on our investment? And then my other question was, what is the West Village Art Loft?
It's on, I think that's one of Lucerne.
Anybody?
You know, William?
Here comes Mr. West
It
Village
says West Village Art
Harlow,
Loft.
and it's
Was it something to do with flooding or?
$100,000. Yes. Oh, that's the one on the north side of like.
That's F and like, I'm F and
Lucerne.
Yes, for the stormwater.
Right.
Okay.
They keep getting flooded.
Is that for the work that has already been done or proposed
Being
future
done.
work?
didn't speak to how it's been spent or when it's been spent. That would be a storm question.
Because I know that
Yeah.
there was, I want to say French drains put in on F Street, that work has already been done and completed. But I also know, because I have the video, it still floods and serious floods into some of those buildings.
I'll get with Mr. Heading and get a description of that project for you.
Thank you.
And ask him to remind me to get him the videos. They're fairly dramatic.
The 2.5 that we put aside for housing initiative, the CRA at their last two meetings has brought up the fact that they're still looking to try to get in front of the city commission to get buy down money from some of the units that they're agreeing to. So we need to have a real hard conversation on that because they're committing to buying properties right now. They've spent all of their funding to buy properties. I'm sure you've met with Joan. But that's something that we really need to move that needle if we're really trying to be helpful in the housing situation.
Yeah, I think she wants to, I think we're gonna try to have a discussion
Right.
on August 15th. The second meeting in August.
It's gonna be a
to
busy
talk about
meeting.
the
Yeah.
affordable housing projects and how the $2.5 million would help with the various type of affordable housing, because she knows that you all have, you want to diversify
Mhm.
how those $2.5 million funding could assist in affordable housing.
And I think she also wants to make sure that we're still committed to pledging that money.
And right, and the Frankel,
Right.
Lois Frankel Project
Mhm.
Initiative.
Can you bring her to one of our one-on-ones before that meeting? Because I'd like to talk to her about the different options out of that meeting.
Sure.
Okay. So that leaves us with uncommitted funds for we're still in the unrestricted portion. So the revenue loss allowance is approximately 10 million. That leaves us with an uncommitted remaining funds of 143,000 that we still need to commit. Now, the deadlines to commit all
Yeah.
the funds for ARPA is December 2024.
Okay.
And
Has to be spent.
has to be spent by December 2026.
Mhm.
Oh, 26.
Yes,
okay.
so while I was in Orlando at a conference, I was able to speak to other finance directors from different cities. What they're doing to reduce in order to buy more time, they are reallocating the unrestricted portion to their biggest expense.
Yeah.
A lot of them have like like police contracts like PBSO. So they reallocate the ARPA to pay off PBSO. That creates a savings in the general fund. And in return, the general fund creates a budget item to transfer those funds to capital projects.
So it alleviates the time frame a little bit.
Correct.
Right. And is that the restricted or the
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 unrestricted.
unrestricted?
Right, couldn't do it with the restricted.
That makes me nervous.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna tell you why. The
Mhm.
penny sales tax was spent very frivolously, in my opinion, without a plan. And that sounds good in theory for a timeline,
Yes.
but that makes me very nervous that if there's an emergency situation that comes up, and all of a sudden that project that was committed from this one-time ARPA blessing that came from a disaster would no longer be. So I would need to know a lot more detail on something like that personally. And it would have to be finite for me to be okay with paying off an obligation we already have
Right.
in lieu of doing the projects that we committed to a year and a half ago.
And I
That's just
think
my
having the
opinion.
deadline, I work better with the deadline than without one.
Okay.
Ms. Jones?
I was gonna say, yes, we have a whole nother year.
Yeah.
So let's keep that in our back pocket,
Okay.
but let's commit the money. Spend the money. So of all the money we committed last year, we've started spending on 3 of the items. So if we're, hopefully, I don't know, when is the fuel tank gonna get replaced? Are we in danger of not spending that in time?
We're actually in the process right now of the dispensers and upgrading the software and everything. So this is something that would take place this year.
Okay, so yeah, let's see how we are next year, if there's any need to worry about,
Maybe we could update in quarterly to see where we are,
Yeah.
so that we don't wait till the last minute.
Mhm.
And I think we'll all be meeting with Ms. Davis
Yeah.
just to talk about that.
I think it's good.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, do we have money scheduled in our regular budget? I mean, there are some streets in the city that really, really need attention. They're a mess. Do we have any budget now at this point to try to address that?
Yeah, so in the 24 budget, just like we had this year, we have that $1 million built in. And then we have our regular maintenance budget in our streets account.
Because I mean, just again, I'm just throwing a thought out here with this 3.5 million that we have now sort of unallocated. I'd like to maybe see some of that money go into our roads because we have some serious problems. And I know that we're just always catching up from delayed maintenance, but that just might be a place, practically speaking, we could use it.
Oh, good, yeah, sorry.
On your handouts, I gave you guys like a big cheat sheet. This is what we got from the Department of Treasury. I just figured it might help you just to give you an idea of
Oh,
what
okay.
the restricted funds may be used for,
Mhm.
or ARPA funds in general. Now, if you go to the next page on the item number 6, revenue replacement, that's where the 10 million sits right now. The item number 6, okay? And then we also had like a premium pay, item number 4, which was done, I believe, back in December 2021. That was already spent. So you can look at the remaining projects in here. That's what may be used out of the restricted.
This.
Yes, gives you a broad idea of what you could use. Restricted.
We can certainly come up with things to use ARPA funds for. Thank you.
Yeah, so for the restricted portion, it's mainly for the infrastructure, with the water, drinking water projects, housing, and also for negative economic impacts in public health, but we don't have public health anymore.
Right.
So,
Sure.
so for the roads, that will be difficult to justify for the using committed funds for that. That will be.
But I was talking about the unrestricted,
Oh, for
unrestricted.
the unrestricted?
Yeah, the 4 millions of the
Oh.
unrestricted. So, yeah,
For the unrestricted, yes.
okay.
But for the
Okay, I got lights all over. I think Ms. Stokes was first, Ms. Milligan, Mr. McCoy.
Okay, yes, I didn't know if we were still on unrestricted or restricted, but I think it would be great for us all to have a chance to let the city manager know that if we have $3.5 million, are there things from our list of capital improvements? We already went through, I feel like we already went through our capital improvement project list and like tackled the highest needs last year. So before we just dive back into that, are there any one-time expenditures that we think could really help in other ways than what's already on that capital improvement list? So I think if we can get something through Carmen, so she can put it together,
Yeah,
we can
no,
all look at it.
we all
together.
have to meet
We
with
can
her
put roads
individually.
on it, we can put a lot of those things on it. And then with the restricted funds, as I started to mention a little bit with our strategic planning, I have been in talks. Glenn put me in touch with the Southeast Behavioral Health Network, and they have ideas on how they might be able to help provide services to the city through a pilot program. So I don't want to, as we're looking at that remaining, so we have 3.7 million of restricted funds that are more challenging to spend, obviously. So I'm going to be getting some presentations to the whole commission on services that they might be able to provide us to help combat the increase in homelessness that we've seen, mental health, and things like that. So I know it's been a big topic that we have seen an increase in homelessness in this city and the county across the entire country. That's what happens when housing is not affordable. And we've heard from Captain Bear how they don't have enough manpower to constantly be going out, and they don't have the case on their side to help with the homelessness. So there's other outreach teams and other efforts that can do that. So there'll be presentations from other groups on how they might be able to help us with that.
But wouldn't they,
And we can use the restricted funds to help pay for those.
but those would be ongoing programs that we would.
It would
no longer
be,
have after.
right, it could be a pilot program. And then don't forget, once we become an entitlement city, right now with the CDBG money, it goes through the county.
Right.
And they say, we're going to take and keep part of it because we provide your social services for you. And then you can use the rest to make improvements to Wembley Gym or the Memorial Park. But once we become an entitlement city, which will be our next census, if we don't hit 50,000,
I'm out of here.
then the money that the county's keeping for social services will flow directly to the city. So there are ways to do pilot programs with the ARPA money and then look for future funding sources. So I know you'll have a lot of questions. I'm not going to be able to answer them right now, but I'm going to be working with the city manager to get these presentations on the books. I have people that wanted to talk on August 15th. It sounds like if that's already packed,
It's packed.
we'll talk about it.
We have the
But-
pool. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, public health is one of the major categories here, and we see the impact of this in our community. Everybody's complaining about it.
Ms. Lega.
I hear what Commissioner Stokes is saying, but in my world, we're giving 2.5 million to housing and we gave $50,000 to legal aid. We are helping the homeless situation.
No,
My theory is, where are we gonna get the return on our investment, right? Like, we're talking about the city's financial situation. So how do we invest that money to make sure that we see it back 5 and 10 years from now? Is it making improvements to the golf course so we get a better return on our golf course? Is it making improvements to the cemetery so we can finally continue to make money at the cemetery to be able to take care of the cemetery? I mean, I want to help too, but this is, we have to be responsible with the city's money. This is the residents' money. And to me, 2.5 for housing is that's a big chunk of money. So I'm just I want us to be mindful of how do we get the most use out of this money 5 and 10 years from now, not the one-time fixes that may help for 6 months, 8 months. So I agree, we all need to have conversations with the city manager.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I hear the concern about, the ARPA money is an unusual one-shot kind of thing. So there's somewhat a reluctance to spend it on ongoing type expenses, operating type expenses. I think the idea of pilot programs is somewhere between those two, that you try a pilot program if you come into an inheritance and have a little bit more money, like an ARPA project, and see whether that in fact works pretty well. And if it does, then you say, all right, that was a reasonable investment to try something out, and then look for other ways to fund it later on. It is good to keep in mind that if we pass the 50,000 mark, then that might be one of the places where that might come from. And I would say, yes, the 2.5 is going to certain kinds of affordable housing things. I don't know that that's quite the same kind of direction as directly working with some of the homeless communities. So I would, but like, as you mentioned, let's be in communication with the city manager on that. One that we've talked about a lot and might fit toward the direction of Commissioner Malega's view of an investment that has a long-term benefit. We've talked a lot from a number of different angles, from the electric utility, from quality of life, from beautification, from heat island, about tree canopy. And we've talked about it for at least a year. And as far as I know, we do not have any program in place or a plan for a program. I think it would be worthwhile to think about spending some portion of, I would guess it would have to be out of the unrestricted, to see what we can do to get some.
That shouldn't be a whole lot of money.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a whole lot, it's not millions of dollars.
I thought we did that last
It's
year.
actually, that's what I thought too. I thought, how expensive can planting trees be? But then some of the number, I haven't researched it real thoroughly, but what I did look at, I was surprised it was more expensive than I would have thought. Obviously, if you plant them really small, they're cheaper, but got to balance how soon you get a benefit and all that stuff. I don't have the answers on that, but I do think that there's widespread enthusiasm and benefits from more tree
We
planting.
all agree.
Yeah, so let's put our money where our mouth is.
Okay, and I'm looking at, it's funny because you mentioned the golf course. I mean, I also think, with all seriousness, we are a municipal corporation. We are not a social service agency. And yes, the homeless problem and the mental illness problem is a terrible one, but in terms of return on investment, if we invest money, I'm looking at the golf course. We're looking at only like $2.25 million, which would, I've toured the golf course and it needs a lot of work. There's one part where the cart path just kind of goes into a lake. They blocked that off. So in terms of investment, that's where we could make money from that. If people knew that the golf course was being improved and upgraded and paid attention to, and not just be this kind of sad golf course, more people would come and we would make more money. That's my feeling. That's just, again, it's just an idea. It's not we're not going to go back and forth. But I just think there are different ways to look at this, and I would rather do something which actually is in terms of a municipal corporation than the other things. And I think that we have put a lot of money. Anyway, that's okay. Let's move on.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
I also would love to see improvements done at the golf course. Do we know, is what's in here like short-term fixes? I thought I heard that there might be bigger projects or more work or bigger ideas. Have you, I mean, I know
For the golf
from
course.
just, I'm looking at Jamie, or I don't know.
Jamie's
Because
looking at
I'm
Lauren.
just looking at somebody who's been here longer, because this predates us coming in. I've heard a lot about major, like potential having to lift the golf course, like what, so if we're gonna talk about investing money to the golf course, which I would love to see the improvements made there, are we gonna like do a quick fix for a couple $1 million and have to turn around in 3 years and do like a giant fix? So yeah.
Because then if we do the giant fix too, now we're gonna have a renegotiation on the space that's there and the lease that's there, and it kind of elevates the level of service of what you can charge.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about everything as a whole. Like, have we identified what as a whole is abandoned? I was not thinking just golf course. I was like,
Just the golf course, just the golf course, right?
so long story short, it would be a temporary fix for a longer amount of time. So it's a Band-Aid that's going to last us for a little while.
Okay.
Right now, I would say we're looking at, so North Palm Beach just did a total renovation, including their entire clubhouse, for about 18 million. And we didn't feel like we had an opportunity to shoot for 18 million. So we went for the Band-Aid option. So something that we could redo the greens, up our fees, make some more money on it, and improve the course little by little.
I mean, the car cat, it's not, even when we lift it, I don't think it's gonna be the entire golf course that's gonna be lifted. It's the water side that's gonna be.
Whatever redesign.
Commissioner Diaz had mentioned tying in environmental water to create more money.
Right.
That's what I'm wondering, if there's a bigger plan that we're working towards, or if we're just gonna like how the short-term, long-term work together.
I think a lot of the improvements that you're talking about that are listed here are ones that would still survive. Because we're trying, the wetlands thing is over in one area of the golf course, the south east corner of the golf course where the water comes in. Ms. Davis, you had your.
Yes, on a long-term side, I think you, as you mentioned, Commissioner Diaz, one of the things that we have been doing is working with our lobbyists to talk about the next legislative session, where they said that we could get a funding for a study to start deal with the resilience issue and the flooding that occurs, which I think is the main foundational thing you need to address to make our improvements more fortified. So there's a possibility we can get funding through this next legislation to, when we talk about
See what's going on, right?
raise the golf course to prevent the flooding, and that would certainly lend to a better improved golf course.
And so would we have to redo the work that we just did?
Well, that's why first things first. Certainly if we can get funding to raise the golf course to prevent the flooding, and then the other improvements can follow.
And to answer your question, I know Commissioner Diaz was talking about like a links style. What we're band-aiding, that's not addressing, that's not adding wetland. It's just improving what we currently have, like
Right.
fixing
There's
our
a lot of
golf.
stuff really
cart
needs
paths.
fixing. It's
Yeah.
not just,
There's a lot of deferred maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
I hate that word.
right. And then
it's a lot of it.
the other thing I just wanted, when we talk about some of the improvements we make and we talk about return on investment, I would love to see numbers with that. I think last year we heard the word return on investment several times, and it's like, okay, how?
So I-
Like, are we gonna raise our fees $2, $20? Are we gonna go from bringing, are we gonna triple the number of people playing on our course every year? So I'd like, anytime we throw that around, I would really like to have real numbers behind it.
How busy is it? How much gets good use, doesn't it?
Yeah, we average about 40,000 rounds a year, but that's increased significantly. I think we're up to almost 50 now.
Mhm. And if word got out that it was improved
Oh, yeah.
and we could handle that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right. And then there's concern of competition.
Yeah, West Palm Beach is, yeah.
Surrounding courses and the new course in West Palm. So certainly that's a challenge for us.
Somebody call up Tiger Woods and go, help us out. Mr. Boy.
One very specific one and then one more general to the golf course. The first one is unrelated to the golf course. We've talked at various ARPA money discussions in the past that, and it relates more to the water department, but I think we probably need a little ARPA money, not funny money for it, but money funding. When we closed off and redid the outfalls, I want to say at 18th Avenue North. And I believe there's one you get further north from that.
Well,
We did it in such a way that it changed the access to the lagoon. Where it used to be pretty easy to take a kayak or a canoe and just walk down and walk in and load it in. Now it's raised, there's a railing, there's no way to get something down. I've had at least collegial informal approval to put a little funding into that and do it, but I haven't seen any movement on it. So it's something that's relatively minor. It is good PR for the city in that the county looks well on us doing, and I think Commissioner Diaz, if he was here, would be nodding his head. If we do things that increase public access to the lagoon for recreational, they tend to come around more with money for other projects and things.
I
So
mean, the
let's just do it.
little street just north of the golf course.
There's several of them. 18th Avenue North, I know is one of them. I believe 16th Avenue, I've had some assurances that when we do 16th Avenue, we haven't done yet. I don't believe that's the one at I believe that's the north end of the golf course. I can't tell you exactly which ones it applies to, but there's several where the access
Yeah.
with a relative, I mean, probably $20,000 would fix the problem. Or maybe less.
We can probably find.
But let's do it and make it happen.
Okay, next. We have a hand from Mr. Brown.
Really quick, just to, on what Commissioner McBoyd mentioned before about the canopy, everything.
About the what?
Canopy, just tree canopy. You'd spoken about tree canopy. One of the capital improvement projects that were added in page 195 of 254 in the book is the parks and open spaces rec master plan,
Yeah,
which will be a portion of that, and that's currently unfunded. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that. I mean, it comes up a lot of times, so that would be.
I was thinking not so much about that. I was thinking I should ask for a study to fund trees, and I thought, do we need a study? We just need trees. But you're right that they're, you got to have.
Oh, I'm sorry, page 195.
You need to have a plan for irrigation for the things and things.
Yeah, the master plan.
I did see it go by earlier. I don't remember what page, but
Yeah.
It's not in the list.
your book looks thicker than mine. Why is that? The other thing that the general one with the golf course I was going to say is that I agree with the statement that when we talk about return on investment, let's have some numbers. Is it really going to do it? And is it going to be, a 2% bump, or is it going to be a 50% bump? And how certain are we of those numbers?
Yeah,
It's gonna be speculative.
I have a really, really good golf course manager, and he's really in tune with the numbers. So what I'll do is I'll tell him to take into consideration, let's say these projects are funded, what we submitted for CIP. Show me what those numbers can be and what we could charge for, and he can do that fairly easy.
Matt,
Cool.
Matt.
I just want to say there is a caveat because it's all weather dependent.
It is all-
The only other
With this hot weather, it's taking a beating.
The only thing that I was going to mention with that open space master plan is there's going to be a recreational impact component to that. So with these developments and everything coming to the city, you mentioned return on investment. and creating additional revenue, having an actual rec impact fee brings more money in for us as well.
Wait, is
But-
that something we can do?
Oh, what?
No.
Not without a plan.
You have to have a plan.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to have a recreational impact fee for developments coming into the city to bring in revenue. But again, like William mentioned,
Charge for going into the park. Oh,
So that's similar to the mobility plan. We're trying to get that done so we can get new developments to contribute to those expenses. You're saying similarly, we can do that with a park master plan and try to get them to.
revenue, we need revenue. But we have to have these plans in place in order to do stuff like that.
and-
So
Well, that's a very good point that we should, again, I'm not a huge fan of plans, but that argument is very valid. So maybe it's worth us thinking about ARPA money, putting a little into that parks.
return on investment. But again, we can't,
Well, there's something you can't
See?
quantify.
But-
There's something you cannot quantify is return on investment. I mean, I'm all for the trees. I want a lot of trees, but it's not exactly a scientific,
What on?
this is what.
no, the impact
Oh, I'm sure
fee,
you
the
can
actual fee.
quantify that easily, but I think the master, there's tons of studies on that. In fact, I just read one
Okay,
in quite a bit of detail.
okay, where are we? Commissioner Galais, you still have a comment?
I do know that Director Brown has a very beautiful spreadsheet in regards to the cost of a mausoleum and things for the cemetery and what our fees could be raised to be competitive. So I think we just have to dust it off. When we talk about return on investment, you know, we just need to dust.
Yeah,
those
they're
things off.
cheap. It's pretty cheap to buy a plot here.
It's ridiculously cheap, but that's because of the level of service that we provide. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about dusting off my.
Yeah, you kind of sum that up. You'll see it when we get to the next workshop and we actually talk about the fee schedule.
Yes,
Because we're kind of topped out at what we can really charge in our cemeteries
because of
the amenities that we provide and other municipal cemeteries around us that provide other amenities
much
that
more
are
pleasurable experience. for us.
correct.
You just buy a little piece of Lake Forest. You don't have to be buried there. It could be a little investment. Commissioner Stokes?
Can somebody from staff pull together other cities that have those kinds of impact fees so we know kind of what they're charging? So if we were to get the park master plan and we were going to charge a recreation, I would just love to see what that looks like in another city.
It varies.
Okay, then I want to see what it looks like at 5 other cities, William. I just quadrupled your
Because
workload.
William doesn't have enough, William doesn't have enough
Like,
work
have
to do.
a sample of, okay, here's kind of.
William doesn't have enough work to do now.
Find that the impact fee that you can charge is based on the project that you identify and the schedule that you adopt. So that some cities who have a very large stream of development have a fairly low impact fee. And then others have a larger one based on when they want things to be implemented. So we can get you something, but it's going to vary widely.
But so can you get us a memo or something about how it could work? How if we got the master plan, the reality of if the master plan says you need $500,000 of improvements, then do we take 500,000 and try to divvy that up and or like how? I just
It
don't
should
understand
be
how these
based on
things
a
work.
percentage of the project's value. Like art in public places is one example of something. Some of them require 1.5% of the construction value to be contributed to art in public places, or the public art be implemented on site. A lot of the recreation impact fees are around the same amount, or maybe a little higher, but about as high as 2.5%.
Okay.
And so that's how it's done. But they generally try to gauge what the stream of development would be and how much revenue you'd like to have to implement what projects at what schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
It seems like it's 9:00. And we have been at this, well, according to our. On the dot, yeah. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Don't need one. Go home. Thank you very much. And again, thank you, staff, for everything. This stuff is
Oh, no,
not
I just-
easy and not exciting. and-
Yes, I can.
Yeah.